Guess we can kick this off here. Well, welcome everyone to the September 27th, 2022 Medfield Board of Selectmen meeting. This meeting will be held in a hybrid format, the Board of Selectmen will attend in person, and members of the public may attend in person, and we have several people here in the audience tonight. In addition, members of the public who wish to participate via Zoom may do so by joining by basically going onto the town website, opening up the meeting agenda for tonight's Board of Selectmen meeting, and clicking on the Zoom link. This evening, our meeting is being video recorded by Medfield TV, so please be aware that we're all being recorded. If you're in the audience and you would like to speak, you either need to use the microphone, which is readily available somewhere, usually in the back row, very close to Bill Massaro, because that is the Bill Massaro Memorial microphone. Not memorial, excuse me, the honorary Bill Massaro microphone. Be careful on that, don't you?
That's recorded too, you know.
I know. This is how we pull them all in. There's a few people eating dinner saying, "Should we watch the Board of Selectmen meeting?" It's like, maybe this one's going to be good. And, we also have the podium over there. We have gotten a request from people in that if you're up to make a presentation, so if you're just asking a question or have a brief comment and you want to be there, that's fine, use the microphone. But if you're making presentations, we've actually had people request that you use the podium because apparently that microphone works better than the hand microphone. So if that's for the benefit of people who are tuning in, we'd appreciate it if you could do that. To start, we'd like to take a moment of appreciation for our troops serving around the globe in defense of our country. Thank you. And then also at the conclusion of tonight's regular meeting, we will have an executive session. Purpose of the executive session is to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and we're specifically talking about the Medfield State Hospital property. The closed executive session, we will not reconvene an open meeting after the completion of the executive session. First item that we have, our first appointment, is with the town clerk, Mary Ann Bonaldi, to discuss early voting schedules and election warrants and appointment of election workers.
Yeah, round two, right? So the state election is coming up, November 8th. We are required by the state to do 2 weeks of early voting, in-person early voting, as well as the vote by mail. So I submitted the early voting schedule that I'm hoping you all had an opportunity to take a look at. So this is what we're looking to do. These are the early voting hours and times that will be here in Town Hall, in this room on the second floor for those dates. The state has certain requirements about, based on the population of the town and the size of the town, what we're required to do. So that's how it lays out. Based on this, we'll be offering people, this is a total of 61 hours of in-person voting here at Town Hall, plus we do 14 hours at the polls. So this is 75 hours of in-person voting that we'll be having for the state election, as well as...
Someone's not on mute. That's me, sorry. I just had to reboot.
As well as the vote by mail ballots that people can obviously request, and I will mail a ballot to them if they'd prefer to do that. And as to date, I was running numbers before this meeting, and we have about 2,000 people in town that have requested ballots be mailed to them for this particular election as of 20 minutes ago.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I think it's going to be busy between all of this in-person voting and the vote by mail, so that's good. So that was one thing that I wanted you to take a look at and vote to approve. And then it would be the election workers to appoint them, and then to vote to sign the warrant so that I can get that posted and distributed in conjunction with the early voting hours. Those will be posted with the warrant.
Why don't we take all three of those topics together? There are three items on the agenda here, but
Yes.
maybe, I'm assuming we don't have loads of questions for
That's
everybody,
okay.
Yeah, I'm actually just curious, so how did the first go-around go? Any learnings, anything that you found that maybe didn't play
You
out?
know, for the primary that was September 6th, we had sent out about 1,600 ballots. We got back about, we sent out 1,613. I got back 1,163, which I found odd, but anyway. So there were some people that got the ballot and did not send it back. There were some people that got a ballot and showed up at the polls and decided to vote in person. So out of that 500 and something that I didn't get the ballots back, there was about 38 people that were mailed a ballot but actually showed up to vote in person. The early voting hours here in Town Hall during the primary were quieter. Keep in mind, this is midterm, so I'm comparing things to 2020, which is a horrible comparison to be doing, but quite frankly, it's all I have to go on, so that's why I'm
works.
comparing it. So it was quiet, which I kind of anticipated for the primary. I anticipate this to be a little bit busier, so it seemed to go good. The machines were great, the workers are great.
So, pardon my ignorance, sis, so you send out a ballot by mail, and then somebody walks in and does it in person. Do you double check, so when you get one that's in the mail, you go against, did that person walk in? Or, so those ones count first, and then the mail-ins are the ones that get checked second?
Right, so what happens is when you request a ballot, you fill out that little card that the state sent you, and you send it back to me. The minute I get it, I'm logging it into the system saying I received an application from Eileen, okay? Then when I send the ballot out to you, I'm logging in the system on this date, I sent it to you. If you choose to mail the ballot back to me, then when I get it back, I'm logging that in the system as well. So I have this, a tracking date. Then when I take it to the polls, I have to check it in again to say, this is when I put Eileen's ballot through the machine. If you decide to not use the ballot that I mailed you, you will come into the polls, you'll go to check in, and it'll come up on, the little fancy poll pads we have. It'll come up on the poll pad that says, Eileen asked for a ballot and you mailed her one. So that person is then directed to me.
Ah, okay.
And at that point, I make that person sign a written disclosure stating that I sent them a ballot. They're choosing not to use it. They're going to destroy that ballot, and I am now going to allow them to vote in person, just to kind of cover us.
No, that's good.
And
Okay.
me, quite
Yeah,
frankly,
yeah.
but us.
A lot of work.
So, yeah, so it's a lot of checking in and making sure and double checking and that type of thing. So that's a little synopsis of how that goes.
All right, thank you.
And those all sound like manual processes that you have to,
Yes.
every time you have to, yeah, that's too bad.
Yes. So it's a lot. It's also, the more people you have, the more cooks in the kitchen, the less control you have. It's one of these things you kind of want to keep tight to you. So it's, I could bring 20 people in and do this, but then I'd be running around checking 20 people. So, we have Tracy down there with me. I have a couple tax work-off people that have been with me, that started with me through 2020 and have kind of been with me. So we have a core group.
Yeah, they know the ropes then.
They know, and they understand me and how I work. So
Too.
that works as well also.
So I only thought I had one question, but then as you were talking, I had more questions that popped
Okay.
up, so this is kind of fun. The first one, you mentioned in the primary, there were 1,613 ballots. In this one, there's 2,000, and I'm just curious, when Secretary Galvin sends out that card, you can either ask for one ballot, or you can
Right.
say, I want to take out a year's subscription for
Yep.
all the ballots you have. So I'm kind of curious whether the 400 additional ballots that you have out for this, which makes sense that you might have more than for a primary.
Sure.
Is that because there's actually new requests that came in?
Yes.
Okay, there were even.
So what the Secretary of State did was, when the Vote Act passed in June, and they decided to send these postcards out, I believe it was August when they did their first go-round. what they did is anybody that did not request one for November, you could request for September, November, or both, if you remember that first postcard. If you did not request for November, that's why you got a second card.
Okay.
They pulled from the state system the voting list of all the people that did not request a ballot. So there are some people out there, I actually saw some things on social media this evening that think because they're getting that second application,
You can do it twice.
that they could get 2 ballots. That's not what's
That won't
happening
happen.
here. You got a second application because you didn't request one beforehand. And the Secretary of State's idea is the more vote by mails they get, the higher our voter numbers go up. More people actually vote, so that's
Okay.
where they're coming from.
Okay, second thing, and this is actually just for the public if they're listening, as I listened to you talking about the ballots, I've also seen you write something about this. What
Yeah.
you said here tonight was if you requested an absentee ballot and you choose not to use it and go to the polls, that's fine. They'll be able to spot that you got a ballot, then people will go see you.
Correct.
And sign basically saying, yeah, I'm not gonna use my ballot and I'm gonna destroy it. So basically, if people requested a ballot, didn't use a ballot, they could go to the polls and choose to vote. But somewhere else in something you've written somewhere, maybe it's probably here in the materials that I actually read prior to the meeting here and thoroughly. There was a place that said, if you've actually voted absent, you've submitted your absentee ballot, don't come to the polls.
That's right.
Are you gonna like beat them up or is it, you know?
Well, what happens is, I've behaved so, I'm doing good.
But what I'm really asking is, will they be put in handcuffs and carted off to our jail cells pending the election police coming to punish them?
No.
Or what happens if someone has put in an absentee ballot and they show up? You just throw them out on their ear, right?
I say, nice try,
Nice
and
try. Okay, okay,
send them on their way. I mean, pretty much.
okay. Next question, now we're getting into the
Oh, that's
nefarious-
the good
now the
stuff.
nefarious
Okay.
stuff.
Could I just,
So-
sure, has that ever happened?
There has been something, not necessarily that, of somebody that comes in, but, you know, I run a pretty tight ship, so.
You're not messing with Marion.
These are all things that I just popped into my head as you were talking.
Yes.
So what you said is you get the absentee ballots that get submitted, they come into you by mail.
Yes.
You then have them, and if I heard you right, you said, and then I literally feed them through the machine.
Yes.
So is that before the election opens? When does that happen?
I do that during the polls. I want it out in the public so people can see.
Okay.
So what will happen is that those ballots that come in by mail that I'm checking in, I'm organizing them and I'm putting them in the vault in
Okay.
these beautiful blue buckets.
Okay,
And then I physically, nobody else, takes them to the polls.
Okay.
That morning, they're at the polls with me at 5 a.m.
okay,
They're sealed, they're locked, nobody can touch them.
Yep.
At that point, some of our workers are my absentee ballot workers. So what they do is, it's an envelope, you know, you have to sign the envelope. They will be checked in, just as if that person came into the polls. That ballot is gonna pretend that the person standing next to them, it just happens to be me and the workers. They're gonna check in, envelope will be opened, we go down and put it through the machine.
okay,
So, as if the person is standing with the ballot, it's just
okay. Got it.
somebody standing in its place.
So now, my last is the most nefarious question of all. Not that this is a problem in Medfield, but if someone gets a ballot, they get an absentee ballot, they choose not to use that ballot, and because they choose to go to the poll,
Yeah.
they hand that ballot to someone else, and that person, someone else, fills the ballot out, because I know there's no personally identifiable things, and signs it, let's say, and sends it in. I'm looking for the check that says, okay, how do you catch that? And I think it's because if you got something that came in with somebody's name that said they're submitting a ballot, but you don't have any record of ever having
Right.
issued them the ballot, that's how you wouldn't necessarily know who the nefarious person was who tried
Right,
to
it
pull that.
they have to be a resident here, and keep in mind, when I send those ballots out, I'm printing out a label with their name on it, their address on it, their precinct on it, and a barcode that I can scan in when that ballot comes in that matches Gus to Gus.
Yep,
And then it
okay.
has your signature on it, and I can pull that application card,
Okay, got it. Okay.
match
If you're not the sharpest tool in the shed, you're gonna get caught.
Well, that's
You're
all
gonna
right.
get
I'm
caught.
I'm covering some ground for some people who are sitting there thinking.
It is interesting, and
Bet you
people
I
don't
can-
really understand the
Right,
process, so
right.
there's a lot of misconceptions about things.
Don't mess with them, it's just
All
so
right.
simple.
Very good. We have 3 items then. The first item is to discuss, I guess, approve the early voting schedule that you're
Yes, please.
proposing. We've all seen it. Starts Saturday, October 22nd at 9 in the morning. Basically runs Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, skips Sunday, picks back up on Monday, October 31st, and runs till Friday, November 4th, which is the Friday before Election Day.
Correct.
So do we actually need to approve those dates?
I
or-
would appreciate it.
So moved then.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I guess we'll agree to the state's requirements for the
Thank
2
you.
weeks. Second item is request the Board of Selectmen vote to sign the election warrant for state election, for the state election on November 8th, 2022.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, that passes. And third, request that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint the election workers for early voting and Election Day. Mark Serrano here, I'd ask if we needed to call out all the names. I don't think, or should we?
Yes. We read them off last time, that's why we
Yeah.
caught the,
Read them off last time, so we will read them off here again if, oops.
so we don't need to do anything this go around, like last time I know we had to give the power of Board of Selectmen to you so you could have the police, so does
The
that stay
way that
intact?
particular vote was written, it carries us through.
Oh, good,
So
okay.
we wouldn't have to do
And
it
we are
twice.
we are granting power to the police chief, but that's coming up, so stay tuned. So the town clerk requests a vote to appoint the following as inspectors for the state election to be held Tuesday, November 8th, 2022, as well as early voting to be held at Town Hall from October 22nd, 2022 through November 4th, 2022. James Feeney, Linda Kimball, Laura Mulready, Linda Frawley, Bill Southwick, Teresa Knapp, Heidi Erickson, Robert Costello, Andrea Sullivan, Joanne LaFrancesca, Molly Sliney, Sharon Tatro, Kim Price, Joe Callow, Wendy Ayer, Christine Alessi, Annette Wells, Christine Babson, Maureen Lifsitz, Robert Winograd, and Rosalie Weiss.
I would move to appoint the election workers for early voting and Election Day as set forth by the chair.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Okay, all 3 are approved.
Great.
She's good.
Do appreciate
Thank
that
you.
you have election workers who have last names that are easy to pronounce.
Keep that
Thank
going,
you.
will you?
I did that without rehearsing ahead of time, and I started to go, I could be in trouble when I get a little farther down this list.
I think
Somebody's
it's,
got to really,
Gus, I think it is Joe Callow.
Callow?
Callow, I
Okay,
think it
and I
is.
was hoping that Rosalie Weiss was Weiss, not Weiss.
Can't
She'll
help
call you and
with
let you
that.
know.
She'll let me know. Yeah, she'll let me know. Okay, second item on our agenda, Director of Public Works, Maurice Goulet, to provide an update on the EPA wastewater treatment administrative order and environmental partners contract for water system hydraulic bottle and water master plan update.
Good evening. Before we get into the administrative order, I'd just like to give a little points of information about the wastewater treatment plant and what leads into the administrative order. For the past several years, we've been using a consultant to look into our I&I issues. And I&I, as we spoke about before, was inflow and infiltration. Basically, the inflow and infiltration in our sewer system consists of cracks in the pipe, illicit connections such as roof leaders, drainage, and sump pumps. We're not sure how many of those are connected, but we haven't found a smoking gun, so to speak, of what all that extra water is when we get precipitation events. But when we get large precipitation events, we get an influx of water coming into the treatment plant, which has to be treated. It's mostly clean groundwater that's in there, but it still needs to go through the treatment process. And with that influx of water, it doesn't have the contact time to get all of the nutrients that we need to pull out of there on a regular basis. So those nutrients, although they're microns, they still go over our limits that we have in our permit. So that's kind of the basis for some of the non-compliant issues. Not serious, but they're non-compliant nevertheless. This administrative order was unfortunate, but the reasoning behind the administrative order came from malfunctions or mechanical failures in our system. And at the same time, EPA and DEP came in for their inspection. And when that happens, it's just bad timing, but it does happen. And I do want to make a point that I&I in sewer systems are very common in all wastewater treatment plants. We're not unique to that. But with the mechanical failures at the time DEP and EPA came in, with the supply chain issues that we've noticed through COVID, with very large lead times, it's very difficult to get all the parts in. So even though the mechanical breakdowns wasn't an extreme long period of time, it does affect the compliance issues at that time. With this order coming in, EPA and DEP were very receptive because we've done work with the I&I, we've done work with the treatment plant over the past several years. They know we're working on trying to reduce our inflow and infiltration to be in compliance, as well as fixing these mechanical breakdowns. So as of this point right now, we're in very good shape with our repairs. A lot of our equipment has been repaired since those inspections. We do have a couple of deadlines to meet, which we feel we're going to be in real good shape to do that. So with their order, there's no penalty. They just understand that we have to get these fixed with the deadlines, and that we're working towards there. We're in constant communication with EPA and DEP, and we should be able to make all these deadlines.
So just a question that people may wonder at home. So if you get water from your refrigerator and it goes through a filter, or you use like a what's that? Well, you know, like I can't think of the plastic containers that people use. Brenda, there you go. Does that filter some of these things out when we hear that might be in the water?
This is sewer now.
Oh, certainly, so this is not
This is
drinking
not
water
the
strictly?
water, no.
Oh, this is going to the Charles River, that's the stuff that's being,
Correct.
okay, so
Correct.
that's where they were getting concerned, sorry about
Don't test your water filter using.
that. It's not that good? And the other thing is that, this is something I know that you have been trying to manage, and a lot of this is just aged equipment.
Well, it's a 1970s wastewater treatment plant,
Yeah.
but just like every other building, and I was talking to Bill earlier before the meeting, that, you know, every building needs to be, have improvements.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be preventive maintenance done, it needs to have, to see what improvements are needed, to see how much it would cost to do that, and what makes sense. Is there an issue that has to be taken care of right now, or is it a wish list? You know, is it aesthetics? Whatever the case may be. We are working with our consultants right now to look into an assessment of the entire plant to see what those improvements consist of. Are they short money? Are they the low-hanging fruit that we can take care of right away? But with their study, it's going to show us what kind of things we should be, focusing on for the future.
And so when I, as a citizen hear treatment, we've got the water treatment the treatment from sewer, and then we have the water treatment that's going on behind Wheelock School, and
Correct.
that's
So that's the water department, that's the water treatment plant, taking out manganese, which is a natural occurring mineral, taking that out of the water to make it better water quality for the whole town and give us redundancy through the whole system. So if one, like we had an issue with well number 6 this year,
Mm-hmm.
we would have that redundancy with wells 3 and 4. This year, we didn't have that luxury, and unfortunately, we had well 6 go down at that time. In the future, we would have these major producing wells to cover each other.
Okay.
So is our main problem when it rains? Is that when we get the non-compliances?
Most of the non-compliances before these mechanical failures has been I&I related. So when we get these precipitation events, the water table rises. our consultants looks through our system with flow meters that they set up all through town to see where the flows are coming from, what direction, trying to trace it back to whether it's leaks, whether it's, could be a manhole cover that could be in the Charles River, that we have an interceptor line going through. It could be really a lot of different things that contribute to this. A lot of it could be tiny leaks through the whole system. It could be a lot of sump pumps that are connected illegally, or drainage areas. We've done smoke tests that, you know, will show smoke coming out of roof leaders, that roof drains, that we could, you know, get the resident to unhook it from our sewer. You know, we don't want it connected to our sewer, but sump pumps are very difficult unless you know, have an amnesty program or something to ask people to, you know, unconnect from our sewer system, because that should not be going into our sewer system.
Yeah, and you have found some of those, you're saying?
Well, not so much the sumps, but the drainage leaders that, you know, people take their roof drains and tie it into the sewer system rather than bring it into their yards and have it sheet flow off their yards. So, I mean.
Or into a rain barrel, which is what we'd really
Or rain barrel. There you go. So it's a difficult process. It's a long process to really, you know, find these areas and try to create projects to take care of it. So basically, if you find little leaks here and there that don't add up to much collectively, do you want to spend that much money to fix a small problem? But if you find you know, a good area that takes 200, 300,000 gallons away, those are the kind of projects we want to take care of right away.
Yep.
So,
So my recollection was that we had high I&I percentage compared to other systems in the past, is that correct? And how are we
during
doing
certain
now?
events, we have it, you know, higher than average, I would say. But, you know, like I said, we're working on reducing with our consultant. I actually have a couple of them online today if you needed to ask any pertinent questions. But they're, you know, they've been doing a good job of trying to find these locations and, you know, creating projects for that. One is in the Harding Street area. I know we've got a design going on right now to take care of a good amount, but nothing that's going to take care of, you know, 80% of it. But if you can reduce the amount of I&I in those certain events, we would be in compliance regularly for those times.
So Harding Street's one of those areas near the pond where it's low.
Right.
And so the water table's probably pretty high in that area.
And if you have
So I
cracks in
think-
those pipes, it's gonna
It's gonna leak in.
infiltrate through there.
Pipes
Yeah.
aren't watertight, so.
Right.
So do we know how much of our I&I is just leaking in through the pipes?
We do not yet. We do not have a percentage of what if it's leaks versus illicit connections.
And do we have a plan to figure this out?
That's what they're working on.
Okay,
Yep.
there's some consultant that's gonna give us a plan.
That's what, yep, they've been working on that for the last couple of years. They were trying to get them to finalize certain things and move forward with certain projects to reduce our I&I. You're never gonna eliminate I&I altogether. It's impossible unless you rip out everything that's there, or cement line everything and start over.
Yeah, I see in Newton that they line the sewers.
Yeah.
But I assume that's very expensive.
It's expensive. You could do section by section. By the time you get through the whole town, you're starting all over again.
Yeah. So in terms of this consent decree that we're facing, that's just to force us to do the fixes.
Right, I mean, EPA and DEP want to assist us to get us to where we want to be, and that's what we want. So they just,
Slapping us on the back of the hand saying, you should have gotten there sooner.
well, like I said, mechanical breakdowns is very difficult to foresee, and with the supply chain issues that we've faced and the lead times, like I said, is, you know, everything's been ordered, it's just waiting and waiting. You really can't do too much. They've been doing the best they could to try to take care of things.
So Mo, my concern is how do we, what's happened has happened.
Yep.
And I'd like to see us not have it happen in the future. And so I'm trying to figure out how to, as a town, how do we make sure that we don't have these problems in the future? I know that we've had trouble finding someone to run the wastewater treatment
Yep.
plant, so we've hired Weston and Sampson to basically run it for us as the
Yep.
operator. Is that an issue? Is that a problem, or?
I think, at a last water and sewer board meeting, they were discussing, trying to go back out to look for a chief operator. Because it was difficult for us back a few years ago to find a chief operator that was qualified to help us move forward. So we looked at consultants to help us get through this period. I think Weston and Sampson, who is our consultant today, they've done a good job. I mean, certain things are unavoidable with the mechanical failures, but, I think the view of the Water and Sewer Board and I think would be at least to test the waters out to see what's out there right now and see what we can get for talent. The market is very difficult to find qualified, experienced chief operators, and we just don't want to settle for someone that's not as, in tune to everything at this point.
Seems hard to fill a lot of municipal positions these days.
Yeah, and
So I know that maybe 15 years ago at the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting, I went to something where they talked about privatizing things like wastewater treatment plants. And there are people that'll come in and just privatize the whole thing, take it away from us, and we just pay them a fee to run it or something.
we just don't know, but we still would be responsible for the plant, even though it's privatized.
Yep,
And we would still have to be
Yeah.
cognizant of what the costs would be for not only having it privatized, but also paying for all the repairs and replacements and
Yeah.
things that needed.
so you've considered that and you're dismissing it?
Not dismissing it, just we still don't have enough information at this
Okay.
time to look at
Well,
that.
and we're currently using a private consulting firm to operate as
Yes.
the chief operator currently.
Yeah.
So we do have kind of a public-private model right now.
So, yeah, sort of a privatization, yeah. I think that's all my questions, thank you.
Sure.
So first, just to calibrate, you had come in the middle of the summer to give us a heads up. This is the same situation you gave us the heads up on in the summer about the breakdowns, the long lead. And I think what, if I remember right, that actually you had that stuff, you were acting on all this stuff
Right.
before the inspectors came in. It's just tough timing.
Exactly.
So at that time, the long lead items were a big deal. The deadlines here, I think, are the end of January.
Yes.
You're not, either, have you gotten the stuff that was long lead that the supply chain
So
was messing up, or are you
a
just
lot of it is
confident?
repaired already. There's only
Okay.
two areas on our administrative order. One is the UV system,
Okay.
and one is the Dynasand filtration system.
Okay.
The UV system, it's a 2-week lead time right now to get the replacement
Okay.
parts that we need.
Okay,
We have till the end of November, even though we want to do it right away.
right.
And Dynasand filtration system, we are currently working on that, and we feel confident that we'll be able to comply with this.
Okay. That piece also probably has some sort of a supply chain delay. It's just you're not worried about.
So with that piece, it's more of investigating what's the underlying issues once we remove all the sand, which we've done.
Okay.
Now we're going in and investigating what the issues are. We don't feel it's major issues, but if we do find something that's gonna take a lot longer than we anticipate, DEP and EPA, especially EPA, is working with us to kind of negotiate this time frame for that.
Okay.
They understand what we're trying to do.
Next question, catch basins are isolated from the sewer system, or do they dump into the
Correct.
sewer system? So, okay.
Nope, they're all drainage, they go to outfalls in certain areas, we sample that through our MS4 permit. But
Okay.
certain, like I said, it's mostly private drains that are connected to our sewer illegally, just to get rid of the water.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, and the reason I asked them, on the off chance people are listening, because Christine and I we were talking about this afternoon, and like, we have 2 sump pumps in our basement, but those sump pumps, in our case, go out to the edge of our property, and they just dump to the surface.
We'll check on that.
But when we were, yeah, you can, I can show you. It dumps in the muddy part of the walkway that hardly ever gets cut along the edge of our road near the, you'll find it.
Land
Just
you're
keep walking
dumping on.
until your feet start sinking
is
in the
definitely
mud.
something to
You'll find our pipe. The reason though I asked the question was because when we first put a dry well in at the base of our driveway, because the way our land sucks water in from the road and brings it toward the house, and we don't want it there, so there's a dry well. But at the time we put it in, they were saying, well, if you wanted to, you could run a pipe in between, we have neighbors next to us, and it's low there, there's almost like a swale there. And they said you could run a pipe, and it would cost, I think it was like $1,500 or something, to plug it into the catch basin wall and dump it. So that actually, if somebody did that, that would be fine, because you're putting it into the basically the normal runoff, and it just goes to an outfall. So somebody has that kind of a sump pump drain, if they happen to do it that way.
So the only thing we gotta be careful of with sump pumps is that what's in people's basements, what's actually
Yeah.
going into the catch basins that ends up in the waterways.
Yeah.
So if you have storage like, chemicals and gasoline or something that's in your basement, that could be pumped outside and then into the basins that also go to waterways. So we have, those are the illicit discharges that we have to be careful of.
If they're storing gasoline in their basement, they probably
Well-
have bigger problems than their sump pumps. But, and then the other, the reason I went into that is there may be people who have sump pumps that are connected however somebody connected them, and they may
Right.
not realize. So the ones we're really talking about are sump pumps that are draining into that you would see it in your
Direct
basement.
connect
You'd
into
know
a
where your
sewer.
sewer pipe is, and there'd be a sump pump pipe that's connecting to that sewer pipe is
Right.
what we're talking about.
Right.
Okay, on the off chance that somebody's got it and had no intention to do anything wrong. And then just as a side comment, going back to the Brita filter bottles, I heard first thing on PR this morning was a story about the city of Las Vegas is paying $750 million to Northern California to put in basically a water production facility that takes their sewage and cleans it up. And interestingly, Las Vegas is giving them $750 million toward, I think, a $3 billion, no amount of money is too small when you're converting sewage to drinkable water. So that's the way I see it, but.
You still
but
want to be
they-
leaking.
Yeah, but they were giving California $750 million to build that so that the Californians could drink reconstituted sewage water, so that there would be a better allocation for Las Vegas from the Colorado River. I thought that was, I'm not sure who was the one that had to be convinced about that deal, but it was just interesting that
Yeah.
the Brita water, you're not so far off the mark if you're experimenting, but don't do this at home. That's all I had.
Yourself, bring your own water, John?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. So we don't have, this is just an update, no
Yes.
actions on that. Okay, let's go to the second item.
So we had gone for a contract last meeting. You're looking for a little supplemental information regarding how they're going to be paid. That was attached to this one. If you have any questions, I believe Eric Kelly's online if you need more clarification on anything.
Any questions? I think I'm the one that was a troublemaker, so I may be the only one who has any comments.
No, I saw that they're
Okay.
paying it X number of weeks in task
Yep.
one, X number of weeks in task two, and that's not even a full year, so
Right.
they've given themselves a full year to get it done.
Yeah.
Right.
So that, and Pete, any,
I just wanted to know what a calibrated hydraulic model is and a distribution system. What are we doing here, basically?
So we're creating a hydraulic model to help us look at all the infrastructure that we have in the system. This model they'll look at all the data they'll collect a lot of data in our system, hydrant flow testing, they'll look at our infrastructure to see what improvements can be made and then create a capital plan and update our master water plan from that. You need the hydraulic model to find out what the deficiencies are in the system.
Yeah, all right, and that gives you the relationship of everything to one another and,
Correct, and it's gonna update our capital where it should be. I mean, our capital is, we have a 20-year plan. It's a little antiquated. We kind of wanted to see what we have right now, to see what is needed. We just don't want to go by old data to say let's throw $400,000 into this water main replacement where that may not be the priority in town. So we really should look at the priorities first and then move on from there.
okay, thank you.
and I was the one who raised two issues. One had to do with the payment schedule, and the supplemental information took
Yep.
care of that for me, so I know how they're gonna bill it. The second one was the issue of transferring the model over and training staff. It didn't show up as an or a priced option, but I take from that that it's not your intention to take the model over. We are looking at, I don't know how long this
It wouldn't
model's
be a
used.
yearly,
It'll be a-
it wouldn't be a
yeah.
yearly thing. It wouldn't, we would have to buy our own software and
Yeah,
do it
okay.
ourselves, and that's not really cost
So that's not the
effective for
intention.
us.
Okay, so the exclusion, we're okay with exclusion because we're not gonna put it in there anyway.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, so I'm
One
good.
quick question, based on, that's, I remember reading the contract.
Yep.
So I know they're excluding the water right now for Medfield State Hospital development. So that's not included, but something they can add on. Do you have a rough idea? And part of my, when I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, maybe they're not including it because it's not locked and loaded. So why spend it and then potentially not have it happen? But did we at least get an estimate? So if there is a next go-around, and we need to have that evaluated, what that would cost?
So for the Medfield State Hospital?
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Because I want to
not-
say, one of the exclusions was it said that this contract covers what's in it, but does not include the water usage, anticipated water usage at Medfield State Hospital, and I think there's one other area. And I thought, well, we would at least want to know potentially what it would cost if we know we may need to use that.
I'll have to, is Eric on?
Let me,
I'll have to bring down.
unless I got my contracts mixed up here, which could happen.
And one piece of this on the state hospital is the responsibility for all of that stuff is Trinity, so the only reason that we might do something like that would be
Yeah.
to take whatever that ultimately turns out to be and plug it into our model to see if there's any new complications from the flow. It's not really it's not a capacity issue and it's not a cost issue.
Right.
Okay.
It had under exclusions and assumptions, the scope of this work excludes any work associated with performing an analysis of the state hospital redevelopment impacts. Further analysis of the state hospital redevelopment can be added to the scope of work at the town's request. So I thought, have they at least given us a rough estimate if we chose to do that? Because I think this is a $95,000.
$95,000 project right now, but to do that, I haven't had any estimates for that extras.
Okay.
But this thing's for the whole town, right? This is, so we're.
Yeah, excluding, but knowing that we're
What
doing
I'm
that.
getting at is it's a small development, relative to the whole town, whatever that turns out to be, if it's necessary, it's gonna be, it'd be like trying to model Evergreen and Longmeadow or something like that.
And
Bill.
didn't we already get estimates from, was it Power Engineering on the state hospital water
They have the estimates for how much water usage would be.
Yeah, so I
but
know
they-
that, which is the main thing.
Right,
we
but
need to
adding
know.
that to the hydraulic model, I don't think they're looking to do in this project.
Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out that anything we do, even remotely related to trying to figure out whether we have capacity or not for the hospital, plus anything we do later on to say we need to add these things, for example, add the hospital to this, those are allowable costs under
right.
DCAM. So, I mean, I would be thinking, as you're doing some of these things, like 90% of this is for the town, but 10% is for the hospital or whatever. I just try to because bear in mind, there's still something in the neighborhood of, what, 37 acres or whatever that haven't been sold. When the time comes to sell those, any other additional costs that you can take out of the share ratio is to our benefit.
No, it's good.
Well, you brought,
Are we answered, or do you want Eric?
I think we're answered unless,
I'm good,
yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Nice
Thanks,
to,
Eric.
nice to see you. Okay, and we need to approve this. This was a contract we didn't actually
Yes.
vote on 2 weeks ago, or just 2 weeks ago, I guess, 2 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
2 weeks ago.
So I'll take a motion.
Move to
It's approving the environmental partners.
environmental partners contracts for water system hydraulic model and water master plan update.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all set, Mo. Mo, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night.
Same here.
Okay. Next, we have the Medfield Energy Committee update. There's 3 items to discuss: reviewing the Medfield Energy Committee charter and membership, the climate action plan, and the discussion of the sustainability goal for the town 2023-2024 goals. And we have Hilly Passas here, at least to kick this discussion off.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here tonight. And I'm going to actually change the outline a little bit. I'm going to start with Tomcap.
Okay.
We're very proud to present that draft is now open to the public. It's been published through the town website, and there are hard copies available at the library for people to look at. And there's also QR codes everywhere that people can scan and look at. And we've had quite a bit of interest at Medfield Day already. We had a couple of hard copies there, and one person even said, I've already downloaded it, which was great to hear. And so we are looking at a 30-day comment period now. We would love for people to read it and comment on it. And then we want to finalize a plan, publish it, and I understand we bring it to you for consideration.
And you'll want feedback from us at some point. I'm going to suggest our feedback might be, let the public comment, let's see what the public has to say, and then we'd have
Yeah, I agree with
comments
that.
from there.
Okay, yeah, that sounds
Makes
like
sense.
a good process.
Okay?
That leads me to the Medfield Energy Committee charge. Do you have any other questions about the Tom Cap at this point?
I already have questions, but I think it would be better to have the public weigh in without having,
Us
at
lead it.
least without having my comments.
Well,
You
you know,
might have some.
No, I think it's smart. I think
Yeah,
I'm
I
intrigued
think
to hear what the
it's a better way.
citizens have to say,
Right,
because that
right.
way they're not taking our lead. It's let them come in, just
Right.
whatever they're thinking, and then we can follow through with, but I think what's been put together is something that people hopefully really look into, and something that I was asking Pete about, because I know he's on the Energy Committee, and I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but like, I look at your challenge, and you have an unbelievable challenge you have when you look at the years that you're striving for, right? And when you look at, 2030, it's right around the corner. That's 7 years away. And if someone who's in this room who's lived in their home for 20 or 30 years, you look at some major investments, you don't make a lot of significant investments 2 or 3 times in that time period. So when I look at some of the goals we've got set out between now and 2030, I look at, and I think I had this conversation with Penny, you had to put a line in the sand somewhere, right? We know we're not going to hit all of those, but they're aspirational to a certain extent. But the next 20 years to me are the 20 years that matter even more, because, and I don't know how this can be done, and this is something maybe I pose to school committee, but it's the youth of this town 20 years from now that'll be sitting here actively involved in 2050, right? Eileen Murphy probably won't, I'm hoping I'm not 6 feet under, but you never know, right? So 2050 to me is like, yeah, but it's that generation that's sitting around right now. How do we engage, and again, Pete and I were kidding, like, with cigarettes, right? Like, the kids will look at their parents and go like, ooh, that's bad. I heard that's bad, right? So why are we not engaging the 16 to 26-year-olds to start looking at it? Because they're going to be, 30 and 50. That's going to matter more to them. Not that it doesn't matter to Eileen Murphy, but it really is going to impact their lives significantly more. So when I look at trying to educate, is there a way with the school system, well, I don't know if it's a back-to-school night, that ship may have already sailed, or some engagement that we're talking to the youth that are then talking to their parents and learning more about what their house has today, what that person in 20 years, 15 years may be like, I heard about that, I should look at that, and learn more about it, and have that be one of the things that this town and the leadership engage the youth to think about, and not just stumble across it later on.
Thank you for that. That is really a very common perception and opinion we hear. And we do have plans to reach out to the schools, and just haven't had the time to do that, but definitely. I do want to really point out that the challenge is not for the Energy Committee, it's for all of us. And the urgency is really upon our generation. The narrative that the next generation will figure it out does not apply here. We literally have, and that's what science says, until 2030 to cut 45% of our emissions. And the people who have the power right now is our generation. We have the houses, we have the votes, we have the investments that we can invest smartly, we have the cars, and if we don't get this under control in the next 8 to 10 years, the lag in climate change is going to be unstoppable for the generation that's going to sit here in 2050. And that's just the way it is. It's not something we, it's like the pandemic. It's nothing you can change with political decisions. It just happens.
Yeah, and again, I don't
And it's
want
really hard, Ali, and I hear you. This
Yeah.
is really hard, but this is the reality. We are shaping the future right now in the next 10 years. And then the kids that are going to sit here in 2050 that are in high school right now, they're going to look at us and say, what did you do?
And I think that the message at the moment is fairly simple in that it's, if you need a new car, think about getting an electric vehicle. If you need a new heating system, think about getting a heat pump. Consider the green alternatives in both of those areas. Those are the big areas where Medfield generates carbon. That's like, is it 90%?
Over 80%, yeah.
And
So-
I get that. I just think the challenge is there's not a plethora of electric cars out there yet. And even talking to people with heat pumps, it's all not lined up, ready to go. So it's a crawl, walk, run. And the fact that we're having this conversation, there's your crawl, right? The more we can get people to at least start exploring, which they didn't explore 10 years ago. I mean, so I'm not poo-pooing, I don't think, it's just, the reality is, when I looked at what our goals are for 2030, it's 7 years away. But that it's that 2040 and that 2050 that's, and I agree with what you're saying, Hilly. I'm not discrediting that.
Yeah.
It is the 40, 50, and 60-year-olds that need to be making a difference, but the world in general has to catch up with it. It's just not all there yet.
Well, but we're very lucky here in Massachusetts because there is a lot of money coming our way, especially for the residents, to make those choices next time they have to have a transition, buy a new car or change a heating system, upgrade it some way, get AC maybe for the first time out of their windows and into a central air AC situation. There is a ton of money, and I can tell you from talking to people at Medfield Day, there's a lot of education that needs to happen.
Yeah.
People are leaving so much money on the table right now. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
So
And
my training for manning the booth, the Energy Committee booth at Medfield Day was about 4 different figures. One is that the rebates for heat pumps now are either 10 or 15,000, plus there's 0% financing. The rebates for electric vehicles, I think, are 11,000 between the federal and the state level. I think those are the main numbers. I don't remember.
well, actually, with the heat pump next year, there's going to be federal as well, and then of course the solar incentive just increased again
30%
to
on the solar.
30% from the federal. I mean, there's the federal. Just in the last month, the federal picture completely changed, and people really have no understanding on how much money is going to be available. Already is.
Okay.
I'd love to make a quick comment. Jim Nail from the Energy Committee. I know it seems like incredibly daunting, and it is daunting. But I have to tell you, I mean, I've been very deeply involved in this for a long time. And I remember even a couple of years ago, Fred Davis, who was chair of the Energy Committee, was like, oh, we got to get on electric cars. And I was like, why? There aren't any, And now, yeah, there's still a limited number of models, but back then it was like Tesla,
Right.
period.
Right.
And now you've got VW, GM, at least have committed to all electric fleets by 2030 something. So we're at this kind of tipping point.
We are.
And I spent a couple of hours at the booth on Saturday, and I was actually quite surprised of the number of people, because we had a heat pump on display there. The people came up and said, I've been thinking about these things, and here it is. Can you tell me more about it? So I feel like people are really starting to move.
Mm-hmm.
The money makes a huge difference, and we'll see over the next, in 2023, this year the Mass Save program pivoted very strongly toward heat pumps, and next year it takes another leap as well. So I feel like, there's starting to be that momentum there, and with the money, with the way the program is structured, I think we can see a way toward a pretty rapid acceleration of adoption of these things that will surprise us all in 2030 when we look back and go, wow, look how far we came. We never thought we'd get this far.
Well, maybe you have this, and I pardon my ignorance when I make the next statement, but sometimes it's like you learn from best practices. So I'm not sure on your website if you have a community corner that says, like, I've learned a lot from you guys about what you did with your solar in your house, right? And then Sean Dooley shared what he did for his. And I think learning from what others have done, and it's not like a paid advertisement. It's like, hey, I'm one of your neighbors. These are the options. This is what I did in 2019. This is what's available in 2022. You're talking about what's available in 2023. Just so that we can start to, go to friends and neighbors that you trust more than some blind promo that comes in a coupon in your mail. I mean, I trust people in this room. So I don't know if you're doing that, but I think that would be encouraging. And then just maybe like addresses that people have done things. So you might think, oh, I didn't know my neighbor had that. Let me go check with them. And again, as a community, we're educating and encouraging.
That is clearly something we recognize as an important tool. The Energy Committee does have mostly experts on advising the town on, how to save energy and money. So we have partnered with Sustainable Medfield, a nonprofit through the Medfield Foundation, and their website has particular actions, say, for example, how to get a heat pump, and invites users to leave a testimony on what they did. So that's sort of our way of doing that, because we also don't have control of our town website. That's something I would like to engage Christine in, and how to sort of get a website that's a little bit more engaging than a town website.
Yeah, and now that you say that, I've seen that Megan Sullivan, I think, gave me a card for that at one of the events, so I will go check on that and see it.
And Medfield Environment Action has a number of lawn signs, a fairly limited number, but there's one for like, I've got solar, come talk to me, or I've got a heat pump, I've got an electric vehicle. And those are kind of rotating around town right now. I'd love to get more of those out there.
Okay.
But yeah, I totally agree with you. It's like that personal, like I told a lot of people on Saturday, yeah, I put in a heat pump 2 years ago because this happened.
Yeah, we talked.
Yeah, we've talked about that too. Absolutely, that is gold in getting people, again, over the tipping point and into adopting these things that at first seem really like new and strange and scary.
Well, and then it's, okay, and if you could do it differently, what would you do? Or what's changed since then? Have you followed the technology, what do you see what would you recommend now versus 5 years ago? Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to point out that lawn sign campaign is actually our campaign, but we're using Medfield Environment Action to keep log of where they are and rotate them, just because it's a perfect kind of volunteer activity.
Hillary, you might mention Solarize Medfield that's coming?
Yeah, so we're working with Mark Sorrell on how to implement another Solarize Medfield campaign. This time it would probably be a Solarize Plus campaign where people can get solar and battery if they want, but also heat pumps, because that sort of goes together. You generate the electricity that then you use basically for free to heat and cool your house. And we're just still working on the legal outline of that, because last time we had it in 2016, that was run by the state, and the state is not doing that again, so now it would have to be run through the town.
Okay.
I didn't realize that 2016 was a state-run program. There was a good program. Obviously, I'm a satisfied customer. The thing that intrigued me about the new Solarize, throwing the batteries in, given that that's not the setup for the, I got a net meter, but I'm on the grid. When you start throwing batteries in, is part of the goal actually to enable people to get off the grid, the electric grid? Or, like, I'm not even sure how batteries tied into net metering. I just don't technically know how that would work, but I'm wondering what this objective would be for someone who would look at batteries.
Well, there are two ways to do this. Obviously, that depends on how you wire it at your meter. If you have the battery as a backup, you need to be able to switch off the grid connection and just keep it in the house when the power goes out.
So you probably manually choose which.
No, I think, I have a generator. When the power goes out, I get disconnected, and the generator powers my house.
And it's battery, not gas?
Mine is gas from
Okay.
I wouldn't do that again, but it's still gas. And I want to just point out, like we in the Energy Committee, we're just regular residents too. We
Sure.
have all these issues of, oil heat and things that don't transition easily, and we have to figure these out. So I completely understand everybody who's listening here that these are things you need to really think about, talk to people about, and it's also one reason why we have thought very seriously about the town having, or us having somebody act as a heat coach where people can go and talk. You know, some other towns have that, and it's a huge resource, you know, for people to get the expertise, go through all the details of their particular situation and help make the next step. Some towns that have volunteers have had pretty good experiences with those. Others have had trained volunteers that didn't. And some towns actually have employees that are full-time heat coaches.
I just wanted to comment on batteries, Gus, because I think now sort of there's two personal motivations. One is the people who just like the newest, coolest thing, so they want to put in batteries. But then it's the people who either have a generator or want a generator just so that when the power goes out, they're okay. But the longer term play here is to, what they call, trim the peak. So in those hot summer days, where right now, Eversource and National Grid turn to what are called peaker plants, which typically are the dirtiest and most expensive plants to run. In the future, when there's enough batteries around, and actually they're doing this now because you can sign up, if you have batteries, you can sign up to this program. And on those days, the utility can pull some of that power from your battery, pay you for it instead of paying the peaker plants. And obviously, if you don't have to turn on the peaker plants, again, there's a big carbon benefit and all the other pollution benefit to it. So that's sort of where people are, the utility scale people.
I look at it I use a different framework there. When we talk about batteries, I'm bringing in a national security side of this. We have highly centralized power systems that even solar flares can knock out. And I look and say, well, there are some places, cities, you're going to need the ability to create concentrated power and deliver concentrated power. But when I realize that I can go for 7, maybe 8, I'll let you know in December, 7 or 8 months without writing Eversource a check with a 30-panel array on my roof. The idea, and I've been sitting there, and I could put another 12 on my garage roof, and then what would that do for me? What I'm getting at is that if what I have on my roof puts me within striking distance of being able to almost provide all of my power around the year. I made it through the summer, still got a $220 credit that I'm going to be applying in October. Usually we don't run a lot of heat. November, it depends. So when I'm that close with no batteries, just solar and a net meter, the idea that we as a country could go to a decentralized power generation capability for the vast majority of people so that you don't have these massive regional blackouts, and your system is not vulnerable to people who want to give you one of those, to me is a very powerful potential that I think has a lot of.
Absolutely. Yeah, so grid resilience is an important tool. I just wanted to sort of point out you're averaging it over a year. So you're actually feeding the electricity into the grid in the summer, helping other people run their AC, and then you use electricity, somebody else's electricity to use in the winter. What the batteries do, and actually a lot of the modern cars can do the same thing, because you can plug in your car and also provide that grid resiliency during peak hours. Usually it's in the summer between 3 and 8 or something, when people come home, turn on the AC for the night, and the sun goes down. You need these expensive peaker plants to run. And that's when you can have a contract with Eversource, and they pay you to tap into your battery or into your car, or if we get electric school buses in the summer, we could actually make money off the buses sitting there.
We buy our own buses.
Yeah. Well, but that could be part of the financing,
Your comment about that, though, is clinging to the regional, massive distribution system. My comment is, well, once you have batteries, rather than simply providing battery capacity to Eversource, the regional utility, if you get to the point where batteries are something that supports you in your own lot for period of time. Yeah, it's not, maybe you still remain connected, but
Yeah, I mean, those
I think
batteries
that's
right
actually where
now,
we need to go.
yeah, absolutely, but right now, they will not get you through the winter, just, the storage capacity is not high enough to really
Well,
get you off
yeah,
the
I mean, you're
grid.
not gonna charge your batteries in August and then discharge them in December, I get that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, right.
I think they call those microgrids, Gus, and that's
Yeah.
one of the things that they do recommend, is that's for resiliency of a system.
Right.
One of the financing techniques that Lexington used with their net zero schools was to put the batteries in, and then they were selling back the electricity to the system during those peak hours,
Right.
and they were making, because the electricity is worth more during those peak use hours, and so that was
Yeah,
part
I
of their.
think what they said was they were using their batteries when Eversource wanted them to, where originally they basically came in the morning, turned the lights on, and started discharging the batteries. And Eversource said, if you'll change your battery usage in terms of what time of the day you use it, that's how, I don't know that they sold the power back, they just changed their usage of the batteries, so that at peak times, they were relying on their own batteries in order to take.
I know that batteries were a big part of their financial success in Lexington,
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
took away.
Yeah, yep,
Because what they were able to do too is you've got the demand charges for a big, load center like that are on top of the kilowatt hour charges. And the demand charges are based on the highest number of kilowatts you're pulling in any 15-minute period during that billing period.
So
And then
that's
you
the
get
charge to
whacked
me, is
based-
the customer using the electricity at that peak time.
Right.
Okay,
So, and then you get a charge that's a multiple of that on your bill. So let's say your typical peak demand is, 30 kilowatts, right? So you're getting charged for that. With the batteries and these things, say you bring that down to 10,
right.
you whack a ton of money off your bill.
Okay,
Good.
that's it for that.
All right.
What's next?
So, you got me all off track now. Where were we?
Well, we have two things left. One is the charter for the Energy Committee,
yeah,
and the
the
second
charge.
is the town goal draft. I'd say the charter is probably the next
The
thing to talk
charge is
about,
the
yeah.
easiest following this.
Yep.
So, this is a request to periodically review the charge like all committees do.
Mm-hmm.
And our charge goes back to 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at this and we found that, do we have a copy? Did I send you a copy, Christine, to
You want
put
me
it
to
It was
up,
in the
or do you
packet.
have it?
Oh,
Of the charge?
Of the charge? Where, did I not send you my
this is the
slides by any
2008
chance?
document? Yeah, it was in the packet.
I thought I,
This is the original from 2008.
yeah, no, did I not send you a couple of slides? I thought I did.
no,
Oh, yeah, I have the
yes.
slides. Yep.
Oh, the slides?
Yeah.
Do you want me
Because
to
the
do-
charge is on the slides.
You want me to turn on?
I have some pretty slides you're supposed to.
Give me one
So
second.
that's the action plan, and the next slide actually shows you the sort of the summary slide of the action plan, where we have,
Give me one sec, and there we go. Can you see that?
yeah.
All right. Tell me when to go, and
to
I'll
the
go.
next slide. So, the, can you go to the
It didn't
next
go.
slide?
Ah.
So the action plan is structured in 6 main objectives, 2 each in,
So we're still talking the action plan. not
yeah,
the
well,
charter.
we're back
Okay.
because
I'm hitting
I-
resume share, it doesn't want to resume, what is that? Give me one second. Murphy's Law, that's how it works.
what was,
Green is
So-
good, keep it green, there we go.
right. So you see color-coded, there are 3 main areas, the orange, the blue, and the green, and those relate to sort of the main areas or sections of the climate plan: renewable energy, buildings, and transportation. Those are sort of the priority areas that we want to tackle, and there are 6 objectives outlined here, for each of these areas, and this slide is from the plan, so you can look at it there in detail. I just wanted to point out that these sort of main three areas are what we built the action plan around.
You left out sequestration as one of the pillars. Why, I'm just curious, partly I'm sitting, we got a lot of open space, a lot of trees. I'm just curious why that dropped out.
Exactly for that reason. I mean, there's you know, I will have that part of the goal, maybe the town goal, to think about this, but right now I don't think anybody can imagine what sequestration would look like other than planting trees, and Medfield already has a lot of trees. So maintaining good tree canopies, healthy wetlands, and healthy soil is probably all we can do right now. If there are technical solutions that will be available by 2050, that would be great. But I don't think that was something we wanted to put in there as a priority goal.
So let me tell you why I asked, because part of the goal says by 2050, we either will be net zero or we will have offsets. So where I'm coming from on this, if we, in 2050, we're serious about that piece of it, because offsets simply means we're gonna take money through taxes and send it to somebody who's gonna plant trees. Or
Well-
perhaps there'll be other forms of sequestration at that point. So in a town that has lots of open space with people who say we need to be doing more and planting more trees, it seems to me that would be a logical component of this plan to make sure we don't have to have any offsets, that if anything, we're the ones who get paid to help, we sell them the offsets for what we're producing.
So there are two issues. One is, the measuring of the offsets or whatever the trees, we would have to take an inventory right now of what our biomass is in Medfield and then compare it to 2050. I mean, if Concom or somebody wants to do that, that'd be amazing.
I'm saying somebody's doing it, somebody that's gonna be selling people offsets is doing exactly
Well,
that.
no, but I mean, I agree, we do have a lot of open space. The other part is that, so the state's net zero plan projects a reduction to 85% of emissions from 1990 to 2050, and then an offset of 15%. But the state has a lot of complicated industries that are very hard to decarbonize. Medfield does not have that, and it should be easier for a town that's so heavily residential to decarbonize.
Exactly.
So
If we overachieve, then we are the ones
well,
providing the offset.
overachieve would be hard, but we could sell. I mean, at that point, maybe if we overachieve, we could sell carbon credits.
So I said I'm not gonna get into comments, but I will share one perspective here. As I look at all of this stuff, I'm looking at it with a financial eye, because a lot of this stuff that we say we wanna do, I'm looking for, and how much are we planning to spend to do those things? But by the same token, my issue is financial. And so it's too
We
easy.
expect nothing less from you guys.
No.
But I want to make that clear. I'll put all my other comments at the end of the public comment period, but that one I want to make up front because I don't see it. In fact, I actually saw a statement that said we deliberately didn't look at it. It's like, this is serious stuff,
No.
changing people's lives, getting people to do things. If we are doing it through educations and incentives,
Which we are.
like I have, which we are, as long as that's all we're doing, the state already is not just doing that, because the state's already passed the same law that California passed around outlawing internal combustion engines after 2035. And if you back that one up, you know what that's gonna do to the auto industry in Massachusetts, starting in 2030 at the latest. So there are coercive components to this thing that I think are problematic from my standpoint. There are also distortive components to this, which right now, it's somebody else's problem. Solar panels that we've already allowed, the only sane thing to do if you can afford solar panels is to put them on, because that gets you out of the electricity group, the core electricity, which means that the remaining people who couldn't afford to or didn't have the insight to put those panels on are the ones that the remaining core users who have to absorb the costs of the utility. So you can look at that. I'm very happy I did it. I'm really happy about how I save at least $100 a month on my electric bill. But I am aware that that was a regressive policy, incredibly regressive. It's just that I wasn't gonna get extra points for being stupid to not do it. It just made good sense.
Which
So-
is exactly why both the state climate bill and the Inflation Reduction Act have, very strong provisions for environmental justice. There's a recognition that, this has gone to communities like ours, not to the lower income communities, and they are going to try to rectify that.
Right. We'll see if they do, but, yeah.
Right, and there are additional programs, like if you have a roof that's not solar exposed, or, you
Mhm,
can't do
yeah.
it.
We just
you
have
know,
to point in the right direction.
You can look at community solar and buy yourself a share and farm, and a solar farm, and use
That
those.
opens up another can of worms around the damage that solar farms
Right,
do to
right,
the
right.
land, but let's not open that
But
one
you
up.
can, I mean, but those are decisions that you have to make to see if that is a, sustainable farm, and not something that, they cut down trees and, drain the wetland to do that.
Sure.
Back to the offsets and those things. Yeah, tree planting is great. From the scientific standpoint, if we had started this 30 years ago, that would have been fantastic. Would have been great. Now the scientists are kind of saying, first priority is stop putting more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We can plant all the trees we want. Trees grow relatively slowly. They take, a modest amount out.
We got
As
30
oppo-
years to 2050.
As opposed to, you retrofit a house, you convert to heat pump, all of a sudden you're dropping that carbon of that particular instance. You can drop it 50% easily.
But why is that pillar there then? There's 4 pillars, the 4th one is sequestration. If it's so marginal, why is it there?
It's something, again, it's kind of a priority issue too. The first priority is let's reduce carbon, and quite frankly, we got our hands full.
Okay,
Even
okay,
as
so-
many people on our
No,
committee.
I was curious. That's
No,
why I
but-
asked the
but-
question.
you
You
also-
just answered my question. We have priorities, we're prioritizing this, and we already have our hands full.
Yeah.
We just decided we couldn't deal with tree planting.
Yeah.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
3 to 5 years, we'll have a different conversation as we see how much progress we make. And we'll see, other than tree planting, will there be carbon removal technologies that'll be more
Yeah,
economical than
sure,
they are
yeah,
today?
sure.
If they are, fantastic.
Yeah.
But they're not there today.
So kudos for actually comparing our plan to the state plan, because that 4th pillar is only in the state plan.
I just looked at, you said you left it out, so I didn't look at the state plan. I won't take credit for examining the state plan. I just thought, you called that one out, and that's the way my mind works. I wonder why.
Yeah.
So,
No, but they did a comprehensive, sort of planning for the whole state, and clearly they have very diverse and other issues than we do here in Medfield. So if you want to move on. So this is the chart from 2008, and it's asked the Energy Committee to first and foremost look at the town's energy use, second, the energy use of the town residents and businesses, and to see if there are ways to save money for the town, the residents, and the businesses through energy efficiency, energy, so renewable energy, reducing the use of energy, that's usually energy efficiency, and also to reduce the carbon output. And there are provisions in there about, making recommendations and supporting the town in that, and supporting reaching out to the public, educational campaigns, and it's really a well-written charge. So we feel very strongly we have been doing this, we are doing this, we'll continue to do this. The only recommendation that we would have for the Board of Selectmen is to recognize that the Energy Committee will continue to be a leader in climate change and supporting the town to implement TOMCAP. And so we suggested the wording in the next slide. And that is just a little bullet here, advise on and support the town's implementation of the Town of Medfield Climate Action Plan.
comments? Any?
You're confirming what I thought when I read the charge, which was, I think that Mike Sullivan did a good job back in 2008.
Well, I mean, is advise on and support, isn't that some of what you're doing today? Because you are advising us just by presenting the plan. I think, and you can, if I don't say the next thing in the right terms, and like, what I've watched in my months here is that, as the board, we're listening. We are certainly looking to the experts. But there may be times where when we sit in this chair, we may make decisions that you guys might not be thrilled about. But if it's the overarching, we only have $1 and there are certain things that have risen up to the top and there's a nickel left and you guys were anticipating 30 cents, that's when we can't, I would think that we can't even step in and say, but we demand the 30. It's like time out. We have an overarching financial responsibility, and that's what's going to be a challenge as we go through this, because there are going to be costs. When I look at this, and I applaud looking at all the buildings and the cost, the taxpayers are stretched today, and we saw that with the pushback on the school, and we know the school is first and foremost right now, right? So it's just, I look at that and I couch it with, I get what you're saying, I just want to make sure that the boundaries are set appropriately.
Well, I want to reiterate something that's been said here before, that the Energy Committee is the only committee, I think, that's generated money for the town, over $9 million since 2008, and we will continue to do that, especially now with the federal and state support changing so much. We anticipate a lot of money to become available if we go for it. I also want to point out that the energy efficiency consultant Susan McPhee that we were able to hire with cobbled together money has done a fantastic job in helping the facilities director pick up some of the deferred maintenance that was overdue and really help maintain town buildings, upgrade systems, and it has enabled the town to really move forward, and that's our goal, to keep moving. Mm-hmm. I don't see any of that what we're suggesting as superfluous. It really is needed at this point to keep us moving forward, because the monies that are coming down the pike require that we keep moving forward with energy efficiency and renewables and all those things that we're discussing. If we think we can continue with business as usual, we will be, freezing out of that money stream, and probably also pay dearly in terms of energy costs. As you yourself say, you have renewable and you love it.
One of the things that jumped out at me when I read the TomCap report was the timeline. It's like a Z, I guess. And from the time that we got the green communities, we got I think the grant the first year was $178,000 when we became a green community. But there was about a 5-year gap before we got the next grant, and that was because you have to complete those projects before you're allowed to apply again, and we didn't complete them because we didn't have the people that could push that forward and get us to a position where we could apply for more grants. Our next grant was it was like in the $150,000 range, but we could have been getting those every year if we had spent the money to get the project done.
And that's what's happening now, that, that money is combined with some money that the town has for maintenance, and then that's enough to actually carry out the job and move to the next project, get extra money. And so using Green Communities funding together with the funding that the town has for maintenance is enough to actually move those projects forward.
So when I read this, I'm actually surprised that's it for the change you're proposing, which I'm fine with, which does not say that I have yet gotten on board with the climate action plan as it's worded here. But again, you'll hear that after the public comment period. When I read this, though, recognizing it goes back to 2008, and I visualize, you've said, well, this is still what we're doing. It's like, maybe it's verbally what you're doing, but when I think back to 2008, when this was first launched, and I was trying to almost, channel Mike Sullivan a little bit, I guess, and in 2008, the kinds of things that we were looking for, like, the easy one I can remember now is the conversion to LED lighting. It's sort of a low-hanging fruit, and it's an easy picture to say, well, just do this instead of that, and when this good thing comes out. And the cost benefit is, the payback is very obvious, because all you're doing is sort of modifying what you've done before and getting to a better result because you're taking advantage of new technology. And that's easy. The things that you're looking at now, or you will be looking at, are more complex in the sense that you're not merely taking a light bulb and saying, use this other one, this one screws into, use that one instead. It's a more complex change. That complex change, it truly is a more complex change because the kinds of things we're talking about tie into other things. For me, that puts a premium on the cost benefit and the financial calculations, which is part of why I reacted and said, oh, we're not going to look at that here. It's like, you have to look at it in this plan because we won't know what to do if we don't have the financial side. And in your defense, I think Fred, on a number of occasions when I've come in hot and heavy on the financial side, he has properly pointed out, and what you just pointed out, is this committee has consistently come up with cost positive changes, has been generating money for the town. So anytime I get edgy about that, it's got more to do when I'm looking for numbers to back up an action, not at all to do with the historical trend. I'm saying, no, we still want that historical trend. The things that we do have to make sense. And I think to your point, Eileen, and simply, what I call it is for those who are old enough to know about the Popeye cartoon, simply having a wimpy rationale, I'll gladly pay you on Tuesday for a hamburger today, which is the life cycle cost argument. Don't worry about what it's going to cost you now. Oh, it's going to pay for itself 30 years down the road. I understand the economic analysis there, but as an operational matter, there are we just find ways to spend those savings because they go elsewhere. So I discount them not because I don't understand the concept, it's that I don't understand how it actually gets delivered as a true benefit.
Yeah.
So the fact that you didn't change any of this stuff, because as I was reading, I said, yeah, they're looking for change this and you'll make this much money, and we decide to do it. Now, in the LED lights, Mike brought up at the time we were considering this, well, if you take them on, yeah, you're gonna save all this stuff now, but if they go down, we own the maintenance. So there's a little bit of that own versus buy issue there. And in that case, we understood it, we made a decision, we switched to LED lights, and at least so far, I don't think any of us are regretting having made that decision.
We're about to replace our first one.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I was shocked that we needed to replace one.
Right.
And
Right.
now they're really
So-
so much cheaper than they were 10 years ago, so it's not a cost, really.
So basically, if this still works, even though the words may work, I actually think a little bit of the way we will envision how those words play out is going to be a little bit different. And that's because it's a bit, these next things, I mean, even something like the heat pump thing, let's say, is, well, that's getting people to take, it's one thing to go from a low efficient, oil burner to a high efficient oil burner. It's kind of like it's an oil burner, it's just got a better one. When you start changing concepts that are broader than that, which I assume a heat pump's gonna make sense because you're replacing a heater and a cooler with a heat pump. So the basic idea is there, but the methods and the practices are not so easy to capture. If the words still work, that's great. I think the way that those words will play out is going to be a little bit different.
Well, so I see that you have this issue with the tom cap, and obviously, looking at overall that, I understand that. We have every intention to pursue every action, every project individually, and present that as, as we've always done, as a positive to the town. So it's not like do all these things and at any cost. So I think that's a misconception that we really don't want to have.
So my issue, I'm glad you confirm you're gonna do all that hard work of what it costs. My issue
no,
is the same issue I had at the start, which is, so far, when you only have conceptual plans with no price tag, you can get people to agree sentimentally to those plans. That does not constitute a signature on a blank check to go do things. So the thing I'm worried about isn't kind of necessarily what's in here. The thing I'm worried about is that we don't take it to that hard step that says, okay, here's what we're gonna spend, here's what we're gonna do it. Gee, we had to make this trade-off, we're not ready to do this yet because the economics aren't good enough to give us, it's that hard thinking. What I'm anticipating is that at some point, there will be items in the town budget, to the extent we're dealing with town issues, there'll be items in the town budget that will be proposed to pay for certain things, and they have to, the justification for that can't be, well, we accepted the plan, we committed to this, therefore this is the price tag. It's like, no, we said this was our goal, what we wanted to achieve, here's the steps that we think are most effective in pursuing that. The Energy Committee has always had an advisory role to the town, an honest broker advisory role to the town. You've seen me antsy a few times because you have two private groups, Sustainable Medfield and Medfield Environmental Action, which they're private groups. I have no problem with that. And you cited Sustainable Medfield. I've gone on that site. They said they were focused on education. It is a good site. And if you go in and what's there, that is precisely what I think I'm happy to see in town for people who are trying to figure stuff out. You can go to that site and all it's trying to do is help you learn what you need to learn. I have no problem with Medfield Environmental Action either, except they are a lobbying group trying to accomplish certain things, starting from a fundamental set of beliefs that you started with that I think you're totally wrong about. And my simple counter on that is, until I see people who are lobbying for the argument about global warming tackle the issue of how China and India are going to fix this, we're bailing out on one side of a boat that has bigger holes over here, and we're saying, well, maybe we can shame them into it. And meanwhile, we're going to go down. So it's not my concern about the concepts. This is all great because I believe in it on environmental grounds. But that urgency about the world is going to end in 2030 or 2035, if that's true, the world is ending in 2035 because China and India are still working at improving their market position out in the global marketplace. And so if that's the issue, and I don't believe it is, that's why I don't believe that. That doesn't mean I don't think there's a lot of great things we can do that make good ideas. And if we have two different beliefs about what the world's going to do in a funny, weird sort of way, who cares? As long as that's not the rationale we're using, that we're using the hard discipline. That's kind of that's where I'm looking for numbers. That's why I'm looking for numbers before we're expected to put money down on actions.
And the TOMCAP is not a request to put money down. It's really a plan to think about how we achieve that goal. And
Well, but you can't make that decision if you can't make the
but-
trade-off. the
No,
economic trade-off.
but it proposes some actions, and we've always pursued with the town individual actions, advised on it, and these hard decisions that you just outlined on every project, they go on every day as we talk, about boiler replacements in the schools and the roofs and the DPW solar right now, and how much to charge for the charging station that's going in behind here. You could resource
So
about
that's the
ready
hard
to-
work, but I think they're important, even the goals. That 6-box grid you had there.
Yeah.
I looked at the middle one, and there's a couple where it's like, we want to get halfway there, and I'm sitting there saying, why was it only half? What basis did you make it half? Maybe it should have been a third, maybe it should have been 2/3. How did you go through the analysis to say this is the right interim goal? And I'm not sure.
Well,
It's a
we
question, I
relied
don't
also
know.
on those things, we relied on regional research, It's not something that we dreamt up necessarily. We looked at other climate action plans. We looked at the research that MAPC has done, the state.
The
You
question
could be
is whether
right,
it's
it
the
could be
blind
a
leading
third,
blind,
it
or
could
whether
be,
we actually think it through.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to
And
argue
obviously,
or
if I
resolve
knew-
issues. I'm trying to give
If I
you
knew
some
what's
sense of where I'm
happening in
coming from, that's all.
2050, I think, or, you know, any future, I would probably play the lottery more often.
That's differently in the stock market, I guarantee you.
I mean, we definitely see this as a living document. It's not gonna like be carved in stone. You know, as we learn more stuff, we may change some of those goals. We expect at least yearly to go back and look at that. Are we on track, not on track? What do we need to do? I will say, at least from my standpoint as the lead author of the building section, I didn't want to look at, I can't look at sort of the numbers overall. How much will it cost to electrify and make the entire town of Medfield? I can't come up with a number like that. That's impossible. That doesn't mean that actually in our building working group meeting today, we were talking about, you know, what are some of the next needs in the schools or the town buildings, and what should we be doing to look at options for that. You know, we will absolutely, and Eileen, to your point as well, we will advocate for, we will propose, here's what we need to do to electrify, but we certainly will look at the costs. We will look for grants. We will bring in the fact that, you know, the feds will write us a check for 30% of the cost of these things, so that we can bring to you, you know, an economic case for it. I was actually talking with Paul Fechtel-Cotter a couple weeks ago about that, and he's like, you know, he's like Mr. Numbers guy. So we will definitely bring all that to you. But I will say, I doubt we will see the kinds of ROI that LED light bulbs had. That like a year or two, they pay back. We're talking 4, 5, 7 years, might be. So I know we'll have a lot of conversation about what is the right length of time to look at.
Even more so, I've known you for a long time, but actually I've probably observed Jim operating as a member of the Energy Committee more because of the role you played with the Development Committee on the state hospital. So I understand what you're doing. I respect the way that you've gone about doing it. So I'm not shooting here. I'm saying the things that are on my mind, I couldn't find here. And at the point before you take action, you got to be able to see that stuff. That's all.
Right, but I mean, we've put it in repeatedly that we will do that analysis for each action. So it's you know, if you wanted to have that analysis done on the whole plan, I think the town would have to pay for a consultant, and you know.
Well,
That's not something we
Yeah,
can do at the Energy Committee level.
Okay, then, okay.
It's just beyond
As-
what
we'll- as long as as long as we're clear that if this plan is at some point when it's finalized is accepted, it's still a refinement maybe of what the sentiment was the last time that we embraced some broad goals. Now we're still embracing what's effectively an aspirational document that is not yet telling us what we're going to do and what we're going to pay for and when we're going to get it done. At that broad level of the concept, it's going to be probably easy to get approval because it still isn't really, the rubber hasn't met the road is what I'm a project management consultant. I want to know when the rubber meets the road and how it works.
Well, you
So
will,
when I
you
hear
will love
plan,
what
I
we've
hear.
done next for the
Yeah.
Energy Committee out of this.
All right, okay.
So,
Fair enough, okay. I'm
You
good.
guys need to vote on this?
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
We got the right dates, today's date, 27th. Pete, you ready to?
Sure, yeah. I would move that we amend the Medfield Energy Committee Charter membership as shown on the slide.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Passes. Good.
So-
Okay.
Do you want me to keep going here, Haley?
Yeah. So the next issue is here, the Energy Committee wants to inform you about changes in how we're running the Energy Committee. We've noticed over the last few years that the scope of the work has really expanded beyond what a single individual can do to lead it and get all the projects done. But we found, because of the way TomCap is structured, that is really a great outline for the Energy Committee to organize itself around that. So we use those 3 pillars there as the main sections: renewable energy, building pillar, and transportation pillar, to have sort of groups that are subject working on those issues with the experts and working closely with the town on particular projects, and really have some level of autonomy, you know, doing their own thing. We wanted to split the tasks up a little more so that individuals can bring their expertise to a particular area that they're interested in, but also do it at a reasonable commitment of their time, because we're finding, because there's so many things going on in the energy sector, not only in the town but also, you know, with the residents, it really become unmanageable for individuals, and we decided to split it up in smaller pieces. And so, for example, the renewable energy pillar would use the objective strategies and actions that are outlined in the climate action plan, and say these are the actions we can do, and this is like a little project, and would somebody want to lead that and be able to take charge of that? Then we find also that really, if you think about it, the work that the Energy Committee does in those areas in many other towns is split over several committees. But we find it really useful to have still the MEC as an umbrella group where we meet monthly, inform each other, and you know, sometimes we have issues that one pillar can't solve for themselves or need more input, and it's really always a very useful forum to come together. So what we decided to do is add 2 co-chairs to overlaying those pillars. One is the at-large co-chair person, that's actually Cynthia Green in our case. She helps to organize the meetings, puts the agendas together, membership, minutes, that sort of thing. And she's also coordinating with Susan on the Green Communities grant. And the town liaison, yours truly, you're going to see more of me. So if any of the pillars have something that they want to present to you, or just to keep you informed regularly, I would come here, or I will talk to Mo, or you know, whatever department we want to talk to that hasn't been directly contacted through the pillars. You know, usually the pillars would work directly, say, with Mo or with, you know.
I thought you were the chair of the Energy Committee.
So we're calling it co-chair now, because
So you, on this chart, you're both in the gray box and the purple box.
I'm the town liaison co-chair.
Yeah, okay, okay.
So Cynthia would really only be, you know, sort of the administration of the
Okay.
of the committee. So we're finding, you know, we're still feeling our way out a little bit and filling different slots of who needs to do what, but we are very happy with the efficiency of this. It's really created a lot of focus on what people can do, what their interests are, and what the next steps are for particular projects.
So does the vision, will the vision come from the leaders of each pillar? Partly, I don't mean this disrespectfully, partly I'm trying to say, so what is your role as the Energy Committee chair, given the structure? It sounds like maybe the vision about what needs to be done on each pillar will come from the pillar leaders, and then your role will be certainly to be aware of it and certainly be the liaison part I get, but.
Well, so for example, like say Renewable wants to bring an article to town meeting. They would propose the warrant article. We all would discuss it in the Energy Committee. We'll say, you know, that's a wording we can live with. We go to Mark, and you know, I would go to Mark and say, this is what we want to do. You know, have that conversation. I would go to the warrant committee. I would go to you. I would shepherd it through to town meeting. So the pillar wouldn't do that necessarily, because they are working with, you know, Mo on the DPW or something like that.
So here's my question then. This opens up an important issue. Who decides whether you're going to put an article in at the town meeting?
Oh, that's the complete committee. We take a vote at the
So you're
at the committee
suggesting
level.
this Energy Committee is an autonomous committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen, not reportable to the Board of Selectmen, who on its own authority submits articles?
No, but that's what we did with the town goal. We
I know,
asked
that's
you
why
to
I'm
do-
asking the question, because
We
basically
would
committees
recommend
typically, committees typically that are commissioned by the Board of Selectmen are not autonomous committees. They're
Yeah.
basically bringing recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, who then decide whether or not they want to go forward with an article. This has been an issue with actually, I think, a couple of committees, where committees suddenly decide, oh, once you give us a committee assignment, now we're ready to just, we do what we want. And that's a grave concern to me as a
Yeah.
selectman, that basically you appoint committees because you want them to advise the Board of Selectmen, and those committees are saying now, we're autonomous vehicles, electric autonomous vehicles, but,
I don't think that there was ever an understanding that we would circumvent the Board of Selectmen.
well, so, and that's why I want to make that, I would
No,
like
no,
to
no,
clarify, and I think you need to, I don't want to box you in tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to, unless you're sure I'm not boxing you in, I would like to get this issue clarified on how articles coming from town-appointed committees that are basically have a role of advising the Board of Selectmen, how they go about getting articles onto the town meeting. And so we need to have a clear expectation about that.
I think there are other committees that certainly put forward articles to town meeting on their own.
Yeah, well, exactly. We need to
That's what you don't
either
want
say,
that.
yes, that's what all committees can do, or in my view, we say, no, committees that are appointed by the Board of Selectmen are not allowed to do that. So to your point, we have autonomous committees, and that's not the role. When we appoint a committee, it's basically an advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen. It's not a committee that's just got a free rein to do what they want.
So if I can interrupt for one moment, I apologize. It's actually, the process is set out in the charter, and it allows a majority of the membership, any elected or appointed town board, commissioner, committee to submit an article to town.
So they're autonomous. Okay. That affects, I think, what committees we create, certainly, because if that's what we're creating is autonomous committees, that really calls upon, and I really wonder whether that's a good idea for the town overall, but if that's what the charter says, then
That was
we've
news to
answered
me
the
too. I mean,
question.
I was under the impression we're advisory to you, and,
Yep,
you know,
well,
we
You're
certainly will want
advisory
to.
to us, but you apparently can put whatever you'd like out, as can every committee
Yeah. No,
that
but
we create.
I think it's to everybody's benefit if we, you know, if I appear here regularly and keep you advised of
Oh, yeah,
our
yeah.
thoughts and progress, and,
Right.
you know, helps the whole town move forward.
Okay.
All right, so that's how we do this. And then last part is the town goal, number 6. We met here, 2 weeks ago, 3
Yep.
weeks ago, and went through the town goals, the selectmen goals, and the town administrator goals. And so the Energy Committee suggested that that Medfield should really have a sustainability goal, and you agreed at the time and charged us with coming up with some wording. And I don't know, Christine, do you have the, no, it's not on that slide
Oh, it's not,
anymore.
okay.
It's a separate. So,
Mr. Bean, I think I emailed it to you this afternoon.
All right, let me stop this for a second. I might actually have it as a Word doc.
so
I think I have it. Give me one second.
the understanding 2 weeks ago was that sustainability is a little broader than just energy, looking at, you know, biodiversity and you know, tree canopy down the road is probably climate as well, chemical use, pollution, all those things, you know. So we thought about what plans Medfield already has on the books, and that's the municipal vulnerability plan, the rapid recovery plan, and the townwide master plan that all have sort of broadly sustainability goals in there. And TomCap, you know, has also built on those plans that are already published by the town. And it's clear that we need to prioritize town goals, and we strongly feel that the priority should be on climate goals at this point, for all the reasons that we've talked about earlier. Because some of these other things, not that, you know, pollinator decimation is not happening. That's clearly scary. But all those sort of environmental issues will just get exacerbated if climate change continues the way the expert predict it does. So we think that is a huge priority. And one thing, if you go down to the bottom, I have listed some of the these additional goals that like tree canopies, protecting soils and wetlands and that sort of thing. I think some other department or committee should fill those in. You know, zero waste and that sort of thing is not what we do, but you know, if you want that on there, that's something that you should ask them to fill out. And I made a list there in the first, yeah, just read that.
Do you want me to go
That's
back
it.
up?
That's it, yeah, go back to up to, so I outlined there, I said further up, you know, that the goal is clearly, you're gonna have to read this to me because I don't think I printed it out, let's see.
I have my copy for you. Better here if you need it.
No, it's, if you read, here, I have it.
Mhm.
So, so really for a 5 to 10 year goal was to meet the state's 2030 climate goal and pave the way to meet Medfield's 2050 net zero goal as a sort of overarching goal. Do you want me to read the?
Yeah, well, I don't think you need to,
Right.
but maybe we can just quick react, because I think we all probably read it, so we'll start with you, Eileen.
So the only ones I feel like that we can comment on right now are the ones that are laid out for the selectmen. Because all
Right.
the other ones need to be TBD by the other departments, correct?
No, but I don't think that's true, but your
Well,
point is that the other ones aren't filled in.
Right, so
That's
that's why I
correct.
wasn't sure
That
if
is
it
correct,
it
yeah,
is to,
that's correct.
if we want to take a step back, because I got the updated one this afternoon. And like, so just, I'll look at the first one. When I saw seek funding for an employee sustainability director, and that's in theory done between July and this coming June. I think it's explore funding and employing, but I don't know if it's something we can hard fast do, right? So I don't want to set these goals up immediately out of the gate for failure, but I think the fact that we haven't done it in the past is we can explore. So if we can tweak some of the 2023, 2024, or when I see here long-term 5-10, well, what about the short-term 1-5? Because right now we're only seeing 1 year,
Yeah,
right? So
that's a good point. I just followed your outline.
no, that's
so-
okay. No,
yeah.
I don't, please don't take anything
Yeah.
other than when I was glancing this over, and again, I'll say this, and I'll probably say this every week going forward, since we don't get a chance to talk until we see this together, it makes it hard to decide, you know, because I look to both of them. I mean, Pete's been on the Energy Committee from day one. You've certainly been involved with this long before you become a selectman. I look to you two to help me to understand what's been going on, because I'll be the first to admit, until the last maybe 12 to 14 months, I was traveling a ton, so I wasn't paying attention to this so much. So that's why we can have a dialogue and look at where we, and if you look at it as, you know, the 12-month goal, but then really filling in that gap between year 1 and year 5. Because it's important to me. That's how you get to 5 to 10 is by getting those first 5 years covered.
Well, I like the goals. Clearly, there's spots that need to get filled in still, so, but I thought it was a good start, so thank you.
So, I
So
know you're gonna talk about the finances.
I'm not so, no, not finance. No, actually, the draft in your charter caused me to realize something. When I asked you to draft it, I said, now, don't make this about just the climate action stuff. We're talking at the level of the 6th major goal, this is an environmental goal. So make sure that you've addressed the full scope of environmental issues. It's fine for the climate action to be a piece of it, but make sure that you're actually looking at this with a broader view about the overall environmental goals that the town has. You didn't do that.
Well,
This thing is a
I
climate
mean-
action.
Right, but I
It's
mean,
climate action
that-
to
in
include
2
even the high
weeks-
level. So let me
Yeah.
finish. Where my head went with that is to realize that you guys are the Energy Committee. You actually are the Energy Committee. You're not the Environmental Committee. So you have a thing that you're focused on doing. So from my standpoint, this broad area, this is like 2 levels too low for what that top statement needs to be about Medfield's aspirations for preserving the environment that we have here. When I saw that all of the priority focus was TomCap, and then things like water quality were of secondary importance, it's like, okay, we're not getting the perspective that we need. So I'm sounding critical, but I'm actually not. I'm realizing I probably asked you to do something that wasn't entirely fair to ask you to do, because I was basically looking at this energy issue as part of a much broader environmental challenge, but you guys are working the energy issue. So the goal, some of these, I wouldn't lead off with staffing, but that's me. But I realized that probably we need to pull this back in and think more broadly about what the environmental issues are. And it's not a question of TomCap is the one priority and everything else, to heck with it. In some ways, as I see it, there's a big challenge that we collectively have that isn't just tied into decarbonizing the decarbonization, which is, I think between now and 2050, and certainly now between 2100, the way that people live is going to become much different than the way we live now. You see some of the preliminary studies that talk about the efficiency of infrastructure costs and how much more efficient it is when people live together. So, for a mile of water and sewer pipes in the city, you're servicing thousands of people. Here, you're getting 10 houses or maybe 30 houses. So I can picture that over some period of time, we as a society, and probably as a world society, will be moving in some radically different directions than we are right now. I can also picture that some of the stuff that we're trying to manually overcome in terms of how we garbage up the atmosphere, and then we have ways that we can use technology to undo it all, I think eventually we're going to learn that it's like, the best thing you can do for some of this stuff is leave it alone. And don't, it's fine to look at, it's fine to go visit it, but basically leave a lot of these things alone. They'll fix themselves with time. And I think that's got some implications for us. Not that I'm a big pollinator garden guy, but, people living in a town like this, if we're trying to get more environmental responsibility, a piece of that is to get people in touch with their environment. And things like pollinators, and I mean, quite aside from the fact that if we lose all the bees, we die before the world ends for global warming, we die before that. So it kind of is important. But aside from that, it's got to do, I look at my kid, I'm not trying to rat out my kids, but it's like, why are you throwing the Coke can into the recycling? You can get a nickel for that. And there's certain things, at least when I was growing up, that I got taught by presumably a society that was not as far along in their thinking about the environment as we're supposed to be now, that there are major challenges that we're somehow or another not getting to people about being connected, being thoughtful about how you deal with the environment. At this level 6, at the top level, I'm looking for the statement of that. And then down inside there, there's a focus around what can we do to address the gases, carbon that enhances global warming, but what are we going to do about things where suddenly we're learning that in groundwater we're getting PFAS? What are we going to do if we find out that really there's microplastics in the world, and that's why there's an increase in autism? We're going to find out that there's some stuff in our environment that we've created that seems to be invisible. There's going to be a big deal. And so it's trying to make sure, this is me talking, but it's trying to make sure that as a town, when we put this kind of a goal in here, we're not losing sight of that big thing. And I'm not saying that to tear out the TomCap. It's that perspective we need here is a bigger, more strategic perspective. And then the TomCap and climate action, stuff like that, has a role in that big picture. Maybe it is at the top of the list for the actions we can think of to do right away, but those other things need to be done. And the question is, is it really just a matter of different departments? Or is it really, in the same way, if it's important to have an energy committee, we have a conservation committee, so, per our commission, so that might get you there, but do we actually need an environmental, right after I sat there and we
Sustainability
suddenly
committee.
confirmed that every committee we create can do whatever it wants. Here I am, proposing a new committee, and I'm not proposing a committee yet, but what I'm saying is there's a broader issue, and what you provided made me realize that that's not what this committee is going to bring to the table.
We can't, and we all see these issues, and we wish we had these extra people and extra time to deal with that. And, you talked about outreach to the youth. This is, for me personally, one of my top goals, not to only get them to action, make them aware, but also to help them deal with the anxiety that comes with all this. I do agree very strongly with what you're saying, is that people are out of touch of how the world works and where their stuff comes from, whether it's energy or things or food or whatever. And that wastefulness, consumerism, is not sustainable. You probably know about World Resource Clock or something, that's a time of the year when the world uses up the resources that can be generated by Earth that year, and it's moving back every year. I think this year it was in June.
I had a client told me to take a look at the Human Development Index, which I
Yeah.
guess is a UN index.
Oh, yeah, that's
And I
large.
said, well, I haven't seen it, but I bet you that the US is at the top of the list. He goes, yeah, by a huge amount. So if you just look at something like that, and this has to do with consumption of resources.
But yeah, looking at, for example, consumerism and the wastefulness, I would love for TSARC to write a plan to get to zero waste in town. Yeah, like Wellesley does, they're having a plan, their goal is zero waste. That not only would save energy for, incinerating our waste, but, cut back on
So
fast
every
fashion.
time I've talked to the Department of Environmental Protection at the MMA annual show, they tell me that the only way to get there is to do pay-as-you-throw, and Medfield hasn't wanted to do pay-as-you-throw. It's the type of thing that you probably would object to, I bet, but it's proven that it works. But,
Again,
Well,
I think this
it
is
also
a
increases
larger,
illegal
I think
dumping,
this is
but
a
yeah.
societal issue that, if
Right.
companies package my stuff in a lot of plastic and styrofoam, there's only so
Oh,
much I
yeah.
can do,
yeah, that
So
drives me
that's a
crazy. I
large
mean,
issue, goes
Right.
outside.
Yeah,
from
as a nation, I wish that we would adopt some sort of cost of disposal of products, so that when you sell something
Right.
with the packaging, that you build into the cost of it.
Which is,
the
there are
recycling
models
or
in
the
Europe.
disposal of
Yeah,
the
for
product and the
decades, yeah.
packaging and
Yeah, Europe
But
has
we're
more
not
of the
in that place.
disposal cost built in up there.
Yeah. No, but I agree. Those are issues, and clearly all of these things have an energy impact as well. That's why we are concerned about it, and we discuss it, and we have to prioritize what we need to do. And if you look at the municipal inventory, you see that all the damage that we can see immediately is from cars and houses, and that they're easy tools that people can use to mitigate that. That doesn't mean DPW shouldn't go and plant wildflowers on all the sides and just mow them in June and not in May. No Mow May is a international movement that the town could easily adopt. And if you want us to make that recommendation to you, then we'd be happy to do that. It's not our job, but
Well, so my point, I wasn't really trying to slam the
No, no, no,
draft.
but
I was saying I
I'm-
realized something when I read the draft, and it's like, yeah, this wasn't quite the right place to look for the broad answer. It's a piece of it, but it's not the broad answer. And so I just, in my own head, pulled it back and said, okay, try it.
Right.
Your basic point that we should add this section, I think, was a good one. It was, you're right. But figuring out how to define what has to be addressed in this section, certainly what you've got here, or at least some final iteration of it, it does belong here. But there's probably some other dimensions of this that belong here as well. And then we gotta figure out how to do it in a way that makes sense, but, so, okay.
So do you want me to make the recommendation that you appoint a sustainability committee to look into that?
No, that's not part of the approved plan yet.
Well, the energy committee reaches the end of what we can do, so I do recommend you look into that.
My response to that is you need to focus.
So I wanted to make, to the first point, sort of explore sustainability director. I know that is a big issue for the town, and I wanted to make 2 points to that. One is, we have Susan McPhee, who's doing such a wonderful job with coordinating the work, bringing in money to do maintenance and upgrades in the town. She and her company is an energy efficiency coordinator. It's very specific. She works with several towns as clients. She does not do what that sustainability coordinator would do or what we're looking for. That is public outreach, writing grants on scale, coordinating different departments, doing all the measurements on how things, like writing plans on how things could progress, helping to implement it, measuring outcomes and that sort of thing, education of staff, all these things that could be part of a sustainability coordinator role. So I just want you to sort of make clear that these are really separate things, and when we talk about Susan's role, it's very different from what a sustainability coordinator would do for the town and hopefully also still bring in money, which is my second point. I spent literally 15 minutes this afternoon just looking up federal grant opportunities for for towns. And we all know that the recent signing of the Inflation Reduction Act is a real game changer for the environment and for financing of those changes that we're talking about. So I looked up some examples. For example, the EPA has a green bank grant, total of 27 billion. About 12 billion is directly to towns for investment in projects, activities, and technologies that avoid or reduce greenhouse gases. So, somebody can look at that, and I'm sure, and this is not, I left out all the environmental justice grants that are specific. So these are general grants, right? Then the climate pollution reduction grant is 5 billion. A $250 million is just to sort of scope and make plans ready, and then the 4.75 billion is for implementation, just to towns. The assistance for the latest and zero building energy code adoption is 670 million to towns. The HUD has 880 million for loans that make affordable housing more energy efficient and healthier and cheaper to live in, to maintain. The low emissions electricity outreach program is an EPA program for 87 million, and that relates to, gives money to towns for implementing complete streets. And this is, again, additional money on top of this, what the state gives to those programs. And then another 50 million for technical assistance, and then the state and private forestry conservation program is 1.5 billion through the USDA, and they provide multi-year competitive grants for tree planting and related activities. So we may not be planting trees, but we could, maybe put some other sustainability related activity in there. So my question is, there is a ton of money, federal and state, on the table. I know that the idea is that departments apply for this, but some of this is really complex work that requires planning, that requires scoping projects, technical knowledge and assistance, and then actual grant writing and implementation and supervision. The question is, do you think that departments are really ready for this? Do you have somebody in your
No,
department?
I think they are. I talked to Susan this week about that after you stopped by to see Brittany, and that money is gonna funnel through the states. That won't be directly, the cities and towns won't be applying directly to the federal government for that. It's gonna come through the states, similar to the grant programs that we follow now, so.
Yeah, I don't know, that's not what I've heard. That
came directly from Susan. I
Yeah.
can follow up with her on that.
Yeah, no, because, you know, I'm networking too, so, but that's something to follow up on. But again, it's still, my point is there's a lot of work in getting projects ready. And I know that other towns are already working on this to be ready when these things are projected to come online early next year. And, you know, who's in charge of that? And how do we get that money? Because we need it not only to pay for what we want to do in town, but we needed to keep climbing the ladder because, you know, the next round of projects will require some of these things to be implemented.
Mhm. Reactions?
We absolutely should be lining up our ducks and making sure that we're there when the money's handed out.
Right.
No, I don't disagree that having someone to step in to try to get the grants is something that is beneficial. It just really comes down to, I know there's a lot of departments that are looking to hire right now, and there's only so many people that we can hire, and there's only so much money to go around. So it really is starting to sort out, you know, if someone can be writing the grant to then say, listen, I just paid for myself, that's one thing. But to bring someone on to, with aspirations of that, and it doesn't, I don't know, I just feel like, again, I get where you're coming from, but I also know, just talking to Christine with some other departments and people that are trying to bring people on their staff, I love the idea, I just don't know if it's something we can jump on in the next 12 months.
I think there are some positions that do pay for themselves. Town planners, I think, tend to pay for themselves in grants. Economic development coordinators, the people out in Medway and Mellis said that they were more than paying for themselves, the staff that they had on that, when we used to go to those 6-town meetings. And I think these sustainability people, given the amount of money that's there at the federal and state level that's coming down the pike, I mean, I think that we need to figure it out. I've spent years being upset that Medfield didn't get $12 million from the federal government like Wasilla, Alaska did. So
You can elect a Republican governor.
We do have
they
one.
obviously had better political connections than we did, apparently. So-
Up to you, Christine, I mean, that would, if someone comes on in that position, that would be someone reporting into you, and just a new
Yeah.
department, correct?
It would be a new department as opposed to either reporting into Sarah or to Amy?
I'd have to look at it.
Yeah.
I would say facilities makes the most sense for that.
Mhm. That's where it would make sense to me. The first thing I think of is, I believe it was Andrew, that we remember 10 years.
Seaman.
Yeah, so we had Andrew, there was a grant for energy conservation. It was 3 years, I think he got paid for. So it was free to us. We brought him on board, weren't sure what was gonna happen. I think he did pay for himself. Well, I mean, we didn't pay for him, but he paid for himself. You know, he delivered benefits to the town, found lots of good things. The only issue that I saw in that whole thing was, had we hired him as an employee for 20 years, in those first 3 years, he was finding and having big impacts. Whether he would have been that, whether he would have had a 20-year run in that role and delivered, you know, worthwhile benefits for 20 years, I kind of doubt, unless maybe, who knows, if he'd stuck around, we'd held him for a couple of years, maybe we would be basically talking about what Andrew, the sustainability coordinator, needs to do. I don't know. So at one level, there's some practical questions that are on my mind around, all right, what is this role? Is this role in fact a career-long role, or is this some, you know, bring somebody on board now to write grants, to jump in on the trough that's been filled up with money right now, that 5 years from now, it's not gonna continue to be sustained. It's gonna be this slug of money, and then everybody chases after it, and then they do stuff with it. and then the political philosophy will change, the economic circumstances will preclude it, something will happen that it won't be there. So it's not automatically for me a long-term role that I can immediately see why that justifies hiring a full-time employee to fulfill. So that's, first thing is, what's that look like? Second thing is, what does it cost? But again, you know, if the issue is, no, they get the grants, they bring it in and you pay them out of the grant, well, then that takes the cost off the table for at least as long as that works. Who do they report to from an operational standpoint? And where my head went was facilities, because it seems like a lot of the stuff that we would be doing would relate to facilities unless it was resilience, in which case I could see it being Sarah, who, you know, where we're dealing with bridges and, you know, infrastructure. So that's the first piece. Now, broadly, I haven't mentioned this to Christine or anybody. Right, just this week, I've been thinking about where we as a town are, and partly this is following up on conversations we've had about compensation studies, losing people to significant jumps in salary. And I'm sitting here thinking, what's going to happen over the next 5 years is labor costs are going to go through the roof. And we're going to be facing a serious, I believe, a serious challenge to remain competitive in our compensation here in town across the board. Because people are chasing labor, because we've just had a major slug of federal spending that's driving inflation. And that will, maybe it's not quite hitting, actually I think it is already hitting the labor cost, but it'll float down and hit it harder. In my head, I'm saying, I think we actually as a town should be looking at a hiring freeze. I'm not saying don't replace people that leave and fill the slot, but I think right now the idea of growing staff is across the board. This is not just town I'm talking about. I think it's a very dangerous thing for us to be doing right now. And so that's another consideration. It's got nothing to do with the merits of what you're saying. Countering that is, yeah, okay, there's grant writing and they pay for themselves, but the thing is, if they pay for themselves and we're sure they can do it for 5 years, then it's like, that's a contract position. Might be a full-time contract position, but it's a contract position. So that's where my head's at right now, trying to figure out if what you're saying is correct, that they will more than pay themselves through grant writing. I sort of kind of believe you that that's probably true, because there's a heck of a lot of money coming down from the federal government for a whole bunch of reasons, through whatever channels it comes in. And the smartest thing we can do for that, in my mind, is to get as much of it as we can and throw it into capital asset type stuff, so that even if everything, you know, blows up economically in another 5 to 10 years, we've locked the value into something that's going to remain valuable to us and important to us. So it's not a straight answer. I'm not, because of the argument you're making, I wouldn't rule it out categorically, but I think there's a lot of thought that has to go into exactly how do we go about doing that, if we were going to go about doing that, just in terms of the specifics.
I will leave the details in your capable hands.
I'll send you my update to the Tomcat.
No, it really is, you know, we really do believe that's an important role to be fulfilled. And thank you so much
Okay,
for
thanks,
having me
Ellie.
here
You
tonight.
covered a lot of ground.
We do.
Yeah.
We have an awesome team.
Yeah, but you were up at the podium for a good, probably 45 minutes to an hour. I didn't see when you got up, but it's almost 9:30 now. All right, and we're good?
We're good.
We're ready to move on. Okay. The next item on the agenda is discussion and vote on the town administrator's FY 2022 evaluation, followed by a vote on the town administrator goals for 2023, for FY 23, and then a vote on the Board of Selectmen goals, although I'm not sure that I don't think we've kind of talked about that. I don't think we'll be ready to get there, so. And I understand we have someone to help us if we.
Richard here, do you
Yes,
have
Rich.
any questions?
Okay.
You want to walk through
Okay.
the process?
For those who are tuning in and aren't intimately familiar with our performance management systems and things that work, this is a continuation of a discussion we've had over a number of different meetings, talking about the methods or the approach we would take to evaluating the town administrator and setting the goals for the coming year. Mark Sorrell, if he were here, and I would refer to the number of semi-heated discussions that I've had with him over the years around my background that's more HR-related and where people's personal performance is in fact a private record, not open to the public. And the legal issues, especially as they affect town employees, that some portion of that evaluation, and certainly the financial consequences of that evaluation and goal setting for that matter, are public. So the process that we have gone through here is we used a sort of, the evaluation we've got here is against the FY 2022 goals that were established a year ago. We had a standard spreadsheet template that arrayed those goals, each of us independently and without any knowledge, and we still don't know what each other said, went through our assessment of the performance against all those goals. The spreadsheet calculated percentages of the total goal. So if it was a completed goal, it's 100% credit. If it was nearly complete, it was more like 80% credit. If it was in progress, it was 50. If it was started, maybe it was 25, and if it hadn't started, it was 0. And basically, we calculated that whole thing through and came out with some percentage number. And then as I think from your summary, I know I'm certainly one that, in addition to that, wrote a paragraph commenting on other performance that was noteworthy. Could have been either way, could have been good or bad. But other performance that was noteworthy that we considered worth thinking about in terms of the overall assessment. The issue here is you set goals at the start of a year. It's possible that circumstances change and some of those goals become irrelevant, so you shouldn't punish someone for having a goal that you thought was a good one go away. And stuff happens, as we well know, over the course of a year, and you wouldn't want a dogmatic employee to simply say, well, I've got my checklist of what I'm doing, and as we're running toward the cliff, just walking to check off goals and ignoring reality on the ground. So in thinking about the evaluation, I think we all took all of that into account. This was a game show. I would say that the bonus here, there's a maximum of a $10,000 bonus that's on the table for us to figure out as part of that overall evaluation. And with that, I think we've gotten the summary of the evaluation. And the highlights here, overall score of the three of us together was 82.5%. And there was a kind of your summary of some of the key points that were made. Should I read? Would it make sense for me to read your summary commentary? So the overall score was 82.5%. Does it make sense for me to read the overall, for the public to hear what that summary was?
This will be a public record now that
Yeah.
it's being discussed in open session.
Okay.
I would suggest that we just have Rich present it.
Oh, that's even
You
better.
read it.
If you're prepared to, sure.
Well,
That's
read it
even
or
better. No, that's
do
a
your
good idea.
presentation,
That's even
whatever.
better.
So, yeah,
Sorry, I should have thought of that. Thank you, Pete.
He sat there patiently.
I
The
think
least
the
he
way
can do
you
is.
put it was, he'll be here if we have questions. I put him on the spot.
Yes,
It's even
so
better.
basically, I didn't prepare something additionally to speak on, but I did want to mention, so my name's Rich Messina. I serve as labor counsel for the town through the firm Clifford and Kenny. So basically, Gus, like you had said, it shouldn't all be based on just the number here, because there are other things to consider, especially where this is planned out so far in advance. And I think that looking only to the number score would leave you kind of wondering, what is the actual performance, because these goals as included in the rubric are pretty specific, and a lot of them don't go into that extra step of like, how is the town administrator doing overall as far as a leader, as far as somebody running this organization. I think that they get to as deep as they can without having that more subjective piece add into it. So I think that each of you did a wonderful job in preparing your rubrics and providing me with information to consider as far as putting together the consensus opinion. So in putting all that together, I did average the scores, as you see that number. I provided the 82.5%. but I also had added some of the consensus commentary. So it doesn't exist in the state that it was given to me, but I did my best where things overlapped and weren't just shared by one individual member to kind of make note of that in consideration of your decisions tonight. So to go into that a little bit, I stated more than one member of the board noted that the town administrator's ability to successfully schedule and complete special and annual town meetings throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. The town administrator led the town and its staff through sometimes difficult and contentious issues, coordinating with all town departments to ensure work was completed. Special mention was made of projects relating to the state hospital, the Dale Street building project, information requests received by the town and administered under the public records law, maintaining good financial standing, and the implementation of a new town department in land use. And then there was kind of an overall consensus that the town administrator did a great job in handling any sort of potential litigation, minimizing those risks for the town, and still kind of ensuring the overall competence, efficiency, and performance of all the staff that we have here in town. So overall, it seemed that the overall consensus was that the town administrator had almost completed all of their goals, and basically that there was sort of recommendation that she receive most of, if not all of, the bonus. So that's basically the consensus opinion of the board. When taking on this sort of a project, you can kind of take it in one of two ways, like just average everything and give everybody the average scores. But I think, like you had mentioned, there are more important things other than just the goals that we set out at the beginning of the year to consider in the overall performance, just like with any other employee.
Mhm.
So, turn it over to you guys.
Just leave it, let's go around and just say if there's any comments first, and then I'll suggest we go around a second time with views on the bonus itself, just as
Right.
an
Well,
administrative award.
no, I mean, you hit upon it, and, you know, my background is, was sales management, led some large sales organizations, and you have to acknowledge that the moment, it's almost like putting a forecast out, the moment you put it out there, it's wrong, right? Because you know life is going to change. So when you hire someone as a good leader, you can either hire someone who's a team player or someone who's selfish. And the selfish person says, I'm gonna make my commission check, screw you guys, I might probably screw the company, but I'll worry about myself first. That's not who I have to the left of me. I've got someone that I know is concerned about the town. And to me, it's just so important that when you look at so many of the large projects that surfaced throughout the past 12 months, knowing that we had leadership that was certain to put priorities for the town first was huge. And it's just so important to me to make sure that you reinforce that, right? And to me, the bonus is a way of reinforcing that you did what was best for the town, you didn't do what was best for yourself. And that ensures us going forward that, again, we don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, we don't know what curve's gonna come at us as we watch the economy go crazy directions. But to have a town leader that you know will always make sure the certainty of the town is taken care of is monumental. So I appreciate the way we're able to, yes, feed our numbers in, but then have the opportunity to break out some of the things that were not addressed straight out on the template, and make sure that we gave you as the third party, I know, something to look at and something to think about.
So I'll just reiterate the things that I told Chris when I met with her separately, which is that I'm very pleased with her job as the town administrator. I was concerned because I knew that Mike hadn't brought her into the financial side of the town of Medfield to the extent that I had asked him to do so. But she clearly transitioned that process just so well. I can remember the warrant committee complimenting you for the way that first budget you did went. And so that was just, for me, that was a great relief. It was wonderful to see you open up the information for the town in a very transparent way, so the budget's online, information is available to people. So I'm very impressed. So I think you've done a great job. Thank you.
I would certainly reiterate everything that's said here. maybe this year, or at least this part of the year, because when you're chair, you're probably spend a little more time talking to a town administrator than when you're not. But there are a lot of balls that get juggled in this town, like a lot of balls. And to be able to juggle that many balls, but at the same time project a calmness, and it's not arrogant confidence, it's just nothing is perturbing, it's not, there's just nothing that makes it look like this place is a disaster area when you come up here. But, and on top of that, I think that tone goes out to the people in the town. And one part of that is when you see it, it reassures you, if you're just living here in the town, that the place isn't going to hell in a handbasket. And then if you're involved in what's going on in the town, there's a level of respect that's required. Even when someone comes in, either you have an off the wall opinion or they have an off the wall opinion. Even if that's true, the maintaining the respect, maintaining the interest and the open-mindedness and projecting that matters a lot. Even if the person doesn't get what they want, that is huge. And I think that as I think about the tone of this town, given the things we've gone through, and just how you've had your hand on the tiller in relatively choppy seas at times with some fairly gusty winds in different directions, that's a rare skill. And it's an important skill. And I think on top of everything else they said about just straight mechanical competence, that is, I think, a very important thing for the town. That's weighed in a positive sense for me. That's been a big part of what I think has made a big difference for how our town in particular has navigated a couple of really tough years. So.
Can we stand up and clap?
Sure, no, she can rebut, she can
You
rebut.
never stand really
So anyway,
Here, here.
hearing no objections. So, recommendation of the bonus?
Personally, I would say 100%.
Recommendations, Pete?
I would pay the whole thing, yeah.
I agree 100%. You want a formal vote, or we just can? you need a
I'll
formal
second that.
Yeah, I was there for
vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so 100%. For the public, one thing I was happy about the way this worked out was that we didn't give her 100% of the goals. So you know that she had some goals that were stretched. And, but we also know that there's a whole lot of other things that, in many ways, if you really look at where the effort went, probably far more effort went into that last 17.5% of that goal than went into the 82.5 that actually gets on the scoreboard that way. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Let me know if after this you need any help putting together for next year or anything else like that.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks,
All right.
Rich. So could I just mention two things? You said that we did this without information. You meant to say that we did it independently from each other.
Did I say without information?
You said the select board did it
Oh,
without any
What I
information.
meant was without the information
I don't
of
know
the
what you
others.
mean.
I know what you
That's
meant,
I said.
but we,
I meant without having the information of
Right.
other people.
we didn't
judge it.
we
Yeah,
didn't
we
work
play.
together on it. We all did it independently.
We continued in our normal operating mode where we never talk to each other unless we have to.
The second thing I would mention
You
is
can tell that a lot up here.
the second thing I would mention is that the next time we have a paid consultant, I would suggest that we put that issue on at the beginning of the meeting. I mean, we just incurred about $750 of charge that we didn't need to if we had it at the beginning of the meeting, so I would just plan that differently in the future.
Is that a fact?
I don't know, I'll talk to Jen.
See if Jamie can give us a discount.
Okay. Let's see, the second item is to vote on the town administrator goals. And, hit it when I print them out. We've had several go-rounds on those goals, so I don't.
It's in here, it's on page 109, if you.
109.
Yeah.
Man, so that's good, that says.
That's
that
the
this
beauty
is-
of having it in PDF.
Right. There we go. There we are. We've actually gone through a couple of iterations on this, so I think we were in the final refinement stage. I don't know if you have any comments, Christine, on
No, I think this, this incorporated, the last comments we had at our last meeting. I think I did include one to address some of what you discussed here this evening, is that, there are going to be things that come up that are outside of these goals that need to be worked on. So I added in the town administrator should continue to work to carry out the board of selectmen goals. And then I would recommend that, maybe in January, we revisit these to see where we are, and give you a status update. And we can figure out at that point what's working, what's not working.
And so I just want to clarify that, because you and I talked about that, because I've done this in the past. Okay, so these are the goals as of tonight, but to that point, come January, if we realize that we've asked her to do something different, or we see something that we might say, okay, let's take goal number 2 and modify it.
Yeah, we can modify it.
I think that's the
Yeah,
right thing to do,
yeah.
instead of just putting
Yeah.
it in permanent marker tonight.
We'll do a status check in January.
Perfect. Put that on the calendar.
Okay. So my changes from last time were editorial and minor editorial, so.
And they're in there, right?
Yeah, we incorporated
Yeah,
this.
I can see more verbs.
Ha. So,
Pete,
I'm fine with
We're all
them
good?
at this point, yep.
take a motion to approve these goals?
So moved.
second?
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Okay, those are approved. Approved, and then the town goal, our goal, the Board of Selectmen goals, I think in light of the discussion that we had on the 6th area,
Yeah.
we're probably not ready to do that.
Agree.
And I think what was in the packet was just my color-coded version.
Correct.
So there's been no feedback from the two of you yet on the existing goals. I guess I would open up for any of us to try to draft that 6th category, but I'll certainly take that, isn't it? Given that I was the loudmouth that criticized or critiqued the one we had, for sure, I'm willing to take a crack at that.
Okay, so do you want me to take this document and some of the questions or comments, just add it to this?
Yeah, whatever way's the easiest, so.
Yeah, why don't I do that? I never
Okay.
thought, okay, so
Okay.
that makes it easier instead of, okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Then the only thing that we probably have to, Pete, if you're gonna do anything for this document, just to make sure that when you do the document, either they're all together or,
Do you have it in a Google Doc that,
I don't, can it go?
yeah, let's do it that way, that's
okay,
perfect.
That's fine, yep. So we'll put the town goals in Google Doc.
And
You
we'll
can
each make
review
our
this and-
comments there.
Yeah, and so the key here, I color-coded this stuff
Mhm.
with what was done, what was still there, and then I had some questions about certain things.
Yep.
That's how I used my color coding when I did
Yep.
this.
Yep,
But if it comes in Google Doc, you can insert as you see fit.
okay,
Okay?
all right.
All right, so that's continued. And then we have action items, these are board and committee appointments and resignations. I guess we'll do these one at a time. So the first one is on the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee appointment. Corinne Schieffer has asked to be appointed as a member at large. We have a motion for that.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. Second one is the Permanent Planning and Building Committee has a resignation from Walter Kincaid, so this is acceptance of his resignation.
Vote to accept resignation of Walter Kincaid.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Okay. Third one here is the Zoning Board of Appeals appointment of Christine Barton for the remainder of Charlie Peck's term expiring on June 30th, 2023.
So moved. I was impressed hugely with her credentials. I didn't realize that she had all that
Right.
zoning
Yep.
expertise.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next one is the Dog Control Bylaw Review Committee. Just a quick check on process. This is not necessarily the complete set. These are the people that want to
These
be
are
on
the
it.
only 3 that have submitted interest so far to date.
It seemed like these 3 actually seem like a pretty good
Perfect.
collection of perspectives.
Yep.
Okay. So there are 3 people being proposed for appointment to the committee. Frank Moran, John Thompson, and that John Thompson is Ann
son,
Thompson's
yes.
son, John Thompson, not
Yeah.
John Thompson up at the state hospital. Although I'm thinking that John, and well, let me finish this. Mark Farrell. So can I have a motion for those three?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
opposed.
Perfect.
Good.
I think it's 7, but I have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it's 7.
And it includes the animal control officer. Did it include the other John Thompson?
I have to go back and look.
Okay, so this is not necessarily, this doesn't close out, this doesn't necessarily close out the,
What's that?
You will be a final draft of the bylaw.
Oh, yes, I do.
Yep.
Yep.
so this doesn't necessarily close.
No, it
out
did not
the-
close,
it's
no, no.
just that they're in, and I did think that they represented three interesting, useful perspectives.
Oh, yeah.
They'll either be fighting with each other, or it's gonna be.
No, they're all level-headed, they're just gonna.
And the last one is Treasurer and Tax Collector Georgia Kalivas to a new term expiring on June 30th, 2025.
Move to appoint Georgia Kalivas to a term as treasurer, tax collector, with a term expiring June 30, 2025.
Second that?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's approved. Next, vote to sign an agreement with the MMCAP Infuse, a national cooperative group purchasing organization for government facilities that provides healthcare services to help in the purchasing of vaccines at bulk rate. This was actually on an earlier agenda, and we deferred it for a couple of meetings.
Yes, and Mark worked with our public health nurse, Brenda Healy, and he was all set with the contract that's in your file tonight.
Okay.
I would move to sign the agreement then as set forth.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's approved. Next, vote to authorize the use of ARPA funds for Medfield outreach for the renewal of the interface referral program in the amount of $6,000.
Yes. So Kathy McDonald appeared before you last year, and she requested $11,000 for the interface program, and the town funded that through ARPA funding. We funded, I believe, all of it at $11,000. They anticipate this year's cost will be $16,000, but the Coalition for Suicide Prevention is going to put up $12,000 of that, and she would like, I'm sorry, it's putting up $10,000. She would like $6,000 to meet that gap.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. And then we have the long, this is the long one. This is the one that took forever.
This is the one we've been waiting and talking about for
Right.
This has been in front of us so many times.
so many times.
Holy
so
smokes.
many times. But it has been, this is the pilot agreement that Nick, Yvonne in the assessor's office, and Mark have been working on, and this is the final one that everybody has signed off on.
So vote to sign the pilot agreement with Select for the solar project at the DPW Town Garage.
Which nets the town about $1,300 a year.
Mhm.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's approved. Next. Second. Vote to sign the $25,000 contract with Plan Sustain LLC for the preparation of a DCS approvable open space and recreation plan. By way of background, as I recall, we already have an open space and recreation plan that had some certain deficiencies. That was produced in November of '21, so it's not even that old a plan, or at least, well, that's the date on the front cover of the plan.
It goes back to 2017.
We had a discussion that, so basically, this is someone that's coming in to help us address.
They're gonna help address that, and then I would draw your attention under project understanding. They will be working to help establish the plan and management template for the management of our open space resources. And Sarah has been talking with them, if you'll go to, let me see, a significant number of hours will be dedicated to working on that operation and maintenance plan. So that was incredibly key, since it's on my goals. And key for Sarah, I know Sarah's been working with members of you've appointed to the committee on mapping our open space as it is.
Motion?
And when he does the first meeting, I'd actually love to sit in on these,
Comments.
just to get a
Sure.
better understanding. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
I would move to sign the $25,000 contract with Plan Sustain LLC for the preparation of a DCS approvable open space and recreation plan.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's approved. Citizen comment. Okay.
It's fine. It's late for you
You
guys.
scared her off. It's got-
Come on. A nugget? Just a nugget?
It's budget related.
All right.
Are you ceding your time to me?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we didn't check, how many are on the citizen comment sign up? Sorry, Bill, you didn't sign up.
I got my comments in last week.
Doesn't even an honorary seat on the
Yeah,
citizen?
well, if he's got control of the microphone. All right. Consent agenda, we have 5 items. Approve a request for the Church of the Advent to post sandwich boards advertising their annual holiday bazaar from October 29th through November 12th at the usual locations. Second one, approve request for a one-day beer wine permit for Seventh Wave Brewing to serve outside the brewery on October 1st for an Oktoberfest event from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. and on October 2nd for a fundraiser event for the Hinckley Playground from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Next request, approve request for a one-day all-alcohol permit for the following Trustees of Reservations events planned at Rocky Woods. Saturday, October 15th, volunteer luncheon event, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday, October 22nd, Bats and Brews, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And Saturday, December 17th, Ugly Sweater Brew Hike, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. A bunch of drunk bats and ugly people out there in the months of
I'm glad that's two
October and
separate
December.
events, that's all I'm saying.
Number 4, approve request for a one-day beer wine permit for the Council on Aging Ladies Night. I didn't know the Aging Ladies had a night like that. It's kind of on Wednesday, October, for anyone who's wondering, it's the Council on Aging Ladies Night. On Wednesday, October
the aging
26th. That's
ladies.
not how I read it. That's not how I read it the first time. It's like aging ladies. What is this? On Wednesday, October 26th, from 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Stop laughing, this is serious business.
I was gonna say, are you sure you don't want to?
All right, come on back next week, or come back in 2 weeks. And the last item, Medfield High School varsity football requests a sandwich board until October 7th to advertise for a big raffle prize for senior night.
I would move the consent agenda.
I would second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Consent
You will
agenda
be
is
hearing from the
passed.
ancient ladies.
Meeting minutes, we had August 2nd and the 30th.
I got all my feedback into Brittany for both.
I think I got mine in too, Gus.
Okay, and I did as well, but I printed these out only because I just, when it's only purely editorial changes, they just say, oh, they're editorial, and don't worry about it. But I think on both of these, I made a few more significant changes, so if you'll give me 1 second. On the second here, give me a second
I
here.
will say on the second, the order was totally messed up, but I made that comment.
Yeah, I caught that, but that wasn't even what I was reacting to. Let me just very quickly. Oh, stop. Okay, wait a minute. There we go. That's how I got to do it. Do that. Okay, so the changes that I made. This is on the August. Oh, this is the wrong one. Wait a minute, let me do August 2nd first, sorry. There we go. What I discovered is when you print them out like I printed them out, they don't print the
comments.
notes, so. The one of them was, this is on page 2, ambulance 2 dispatched 84 times, and it lists them all out, equaling $66,000 in lost revenue. That didn't make sense to me, that we dispatched the ambulance and lost revenue as a result of it, so something's not right, but I don't know what it is. It's just that the wording didn't seem right to me there. So that was one, and then also that same, where was it? The very last bullet on page 2, it reads, continue staffing a 4th member to provide a second ALS ambulance, and I don't think we're not continuing to staff a 4th member, we're introducing a 4th member, right?
Who's gonna request?
So that was, I just want to make sure my memory was good on that. Let's see,
Do you ever watch YouTube when you read these?
no, this is my mind. And Okay, so the one, so, I think it was, there's one in here I just said, I'm not sure if my edit is correct, but this is on page, what page am I on? This is page 5. It says Chief Garrett requested the Board of Selectmen, I crossed out respectfully and made a comment, we always appoint people respectfully, appoint Officer Di Natale as a special police officer, which will enable her to have police powers and perform details and road shifts. And then I edited it, and I said, this official appointment is a requirement of the Post Commission, because the way it reads right now, it says, will enable her to have police powers and perform details and road shifts, which is a requirement of the Post Commission. It's like, it didn't make sense to me.
We'll change
So, that one, and I think everything else. Oh, no, there, on page 8, item 12, there's some bullets. The second bullet in the list says, Milton recently increased from 3 to 5. This is the discussion about going from 3 to 5 selectmen. And the second bullet reads, Milton recently increased from 3 to 5. And the original words was, and it is not going well.
And that's not what I said.
Somebody crossed,
I
so
did.
you crossed
Yeah, I
out, is
crossed out,
not
that's not
going
what I said.
well.
I said, it's just, it's, I put the edit on the side.
You deleted it. So what happens is the
Oh,
bullet
the-
reads, Milton recently increased
Well,
from 3 to
there
5, and it.
Should have been a
Then
comment.
it got rid of the next bullet, and then the next bullet says, if you have a committee of 5 members have the right to hold meetings that aren't public. So those two bullets, we deleted, there was a deleted
Well-
bullet, but it didn't connect with the half sentence. You can,
No, so I was on there earlier, so I know I finished it, because that's not what I said. I said it could have gone better or something like that, but I did not say it wasn't going well.
okay, so.
It's just yeah,
the-
so I'll have to go check and see.
You can check that
Yeah.
and make it whatever it is. Right now, those two bullets, because the way, for some reason, the deletion went all the way to the next bullet,
That's weird.
which
Okay.
made it look like we were combining two bullets, except that didn't make any sense either, and I didn't know what the right words were. And then, let's see.
Because I watch YouTube, and I literally go through these, and that's
Yeah.
where I know for sure if they're completely said, or if they're not catching our comments correctly.
So there's several bullets that describe what each of us had to say, and I added a bullet at the bottom, but I want to make sure, the way we talked about, the bullets highlight what was covered in the discussion about going from 3 to 5. I believe, my impression at the end of that discussion is, when I added a bullet that said, the conclusion of this discussion was that the number of selectmen would be left at 3 for the time being.
Correct.
That's my words, but I wanted to make sure the two of you agreed that that's where we came out at the end of that discussion.
That's what we said in the
Okay.
YouTube. We
Okay,
literally
just-
at the
just-
end said, okay, so we're good with this.
Okay, I just wanted, so I wasn't watching the video, I was just sitting there going, I think I know where it
I'm,
came
I'm,
out.
I'm
Okay.
not that good. I watch
it.
YouTube.
Okay.
Just makes it easier.
I ended up being more in favor of 5 than you two did, but I'm not,
So I think we,
not feeling compelled to
Right.
move to 5.
right, And that's why I said for the time being, it's not, I wasn't making it as a definitive, ultimate, unchanging decision, it's just, and I think, yeah, that's it for that one. So those are all in there, it's just, I wanted to be sure that you agreed with, that was more than just minor typos. And then the other one here
Is when we had the meeting at the high school.
is the one, yeah, this should have been, this was August 30th, and typos. I made an ad on page 2. It talked about, if you recall, Terry McEwen got up and talked about doing the survey. And I added, so it said citizens, he expressed the importance of document availability to citizens for selectmen and school committee members. The documents don't show up until the day of the meeting. Citizens should have at least 1 week to read the documents prior to the meetings. I added, no, actually, no, it's not that. Somebody else added, he felt an after-action report should be done to determine why the project was voted down. Pete, I think this is your change. Such as he does in his employment in which he offered, and you said to do for the defeated new school, and I said to help with for the defeated new school, only because I don't think he actually said, let me run the survey for you. I think he said, I'd be happy to help do that survey. So it was mainly just not suggesting that he said he was willing to do it, that's all. Okay, there's one other place, this is paragraph, but I don't think it's not paragraph, phrase. I don't think that's controversial. On page 3, Mr. Peterson said there was a tremendous amount of information available on the new school building project. Mr. Burby said, while information may have been publicly available, the exchange of ideas was not there. So I just expanded that to make that clearer. That was actually what I said, so it wasn't.
Send you too.
And I think, on the activities, I didn't attend the Medfield Energy Committee. I crossed out, I wasn't at the Medfield Energy Committee social at Kingsbury Club. I was at Kingsbury
No,
Club.
you know, they might have
but not
picked up,
for the-
whoever reviewed that might have, because you were there meeting with Sean Dooley, but it had nothing to do with Energy
Right,
Committee.
exactly. So those are those, I think, are all the changes. Yes, they are. So we have a motion to accept those
So
as
moved.
amended.
So moved.
Yeah, so moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, those are approved. Let's see, town administrator update.
Few things. We'll be running our first COVID booster clinic on Tuesday, October 9th from 2 to 7 p.m. The information will be on the website tomorrow morning. You can sign up using the state website, which is Color, or you'll be able to do it through the town website as well. We'll get that going on Tuesday. And then
By mail too, or is it just the boosters?
I would have to talk to the public health nurse about that. I did not ask her that question.
That's good.
I'll find out for you.
Good to have in your-
I'll have her put it on there, whatever she's deciding. She's supposed to be giving me the press release in the morning. And the school building committee application is now live on the website, and you can link that directly through our homepage. That's it.
Let's see, next is, next meeting dates. Our next meeting is October 11th, Tuesday, followed by a second meeting in October. On October 25th, that meeting will be in the Library Media Center due to early in-person voting in the town hall. Selectmen reports. Eileen.
So, went to Medfield Day this past weekend, nice day, great turnout. Also went to the CAM event the weekend before, which was fantastic, the Martin Sexton, Peter Mueller. It was like 850 people, whatever, awesome turnout. Had a chance to meet this past Thursday with the PTO co-presidents at Memorial School to meet with them. They gave me an overview on Danielle Tata and Kelly Babahani. They had questions about, what was happening with Hinkley Helpers. Was there anything that we could be doing to help with the Memorial School playground? And I just referred them to Mike LaFrancesca, because I think Mike, I had some concerns that what they presented me, was it a live bid, or was it a project scope that would have been presented back in 2019 when they were looking at what it might cost to redo it. So I actually ironically bumped into Mike LaFrancesca following that afternoon, going through the high school as the girls' soccer team was coming back, and mentioned the meeting, and he's like, yeah, absolutely, have them come meet with me. I can give them some guidance on where we were, where it may be on the capital budget, capital planning. He wasn't sure if it was still on. That's something he was gonna go check on. And then, my notes here, give me one sec. I'll be dying to know, the boys and girls varsity soccer teams played over at Gillette tonight. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. So they were playing Dover Sherburne, so that was a nice outing. And then we get the Rail Trail grand opening this Saturday afternoon.
2 to 4.
And then they Hinkley Helpers thing on Sunday.
Correct.
So that is my scoop.
Pete?
I got to the Arbor Day celebration where the Medfield High School class of '72 planted a tree at Dale Street School, not Dale Street, at the Blake Middle School. I got there late, but got to see all the people, so that was good. Went to that Martin Sexton concert up at Bell Forge. That was very enjoyable. Did the yoga on the turf that the Medfield Coalition for Suicide Prevention was sponsoring. Tracy Buckley did a great job of leading, 30 people that were just really spread out. She just kept moving constantly and made it really work well. And then on Medfield Day, I spent my time at the Medfield Foundation booth and the Medfield Energy Committee booth from the Energy Committee booth, you could see the installation of the charging stations behind the town hall down Janes Avenue. So I don't know if they're operational yet, but they were working hard on them on
Microchips are
Saturday.
still there this afternoon.
And then went to a Tomcat meeting that was to get the Tomcat finally ready to go out, and that's it.
In my case, I was also at the Arbor Day Class of 72 reunion, the planting of the linden tree. Given the description of what a linden tree is, I'm kind of curious to see what it turns into, because it's sort of like a pollinator tree. It's fragrant, it gets, apparently it gets big enough, it has lots of shade and all kinds of stuff like that, so
There's a
that was
row
kind
of,
of interesting.
there's a row of them on the town property up at the hospital, actually, on the town side. So
Okay.
before
We'll have
that
to
first
go
driveway that
look
goes in
for 'em.
by the Bishop farmhouse.
Okay, Oh,
One
really?
of them came
Okay.
down, one of the big ones came down, but
Okay.
they have a very nice shape,
yeah.
very symmetrical.
I'm just curious what they smell like, though.
They
seem
smell very
fragrant.
sweet.
Yep, okay, well, I'll pay more attention when I'm in that direction. It was the Class 72 was celebrating their 50th reunion, and it happened to be, in my case, for my hometown, Seekonk, that was the Class of 71, the following Friday night, celebrating our 50th a year late. And so I acknowledge to the Class of 72 that their youthful, fit, enthusiastic optimism was a standard that I was going to be applying to my own class. And we held our own, but the Class 72 around here was pretty upbeat, lively group when we were there for the unveiling of the Arbor Day tree. We finally had an OPEB trust fund meeting about a week ago, and I will be working, Mike Pastore is going to be picking up the chairmanship of that. I've had it, and I haven't been doing a really good job of scheduling meetings over the last year and a half, so Mike is going to pick that up, and we will be, I'm going to meet with him on Thursday night, but we will have, there's a standard presentation that we've typically given to the Board of Selectmen on how the funds have been performing. So we should have that for you this fall, probably pretty quickly after Mike takes over and gets things up and running and on course. I went to Medfield Day as well. I made it down along Meeting House Pond to the corner with Ferry Street, but as I walked down, people that know you stop and talk, and then finally I wound up with an extended conversation down in the little island that's right at the end of the street there that people have to go around, and I never made it past that corner, so I'm sure the whole thing was good, I bet, but the only part I saw was the road along Meeting House Road. And it was a good conversation. It was time well spent, but it just wasn't, I didn't cover a lot of ground at Medfield Day. I did see you, though.
I
Pete
did.
was walking by with a full box of KN95 masks that somebody gave him.
Shows
Because he wanted
supermarkets.
the
It was
beer
the
pong.
strangest handout at Medfield Day.
Yeah. And then the last thing, we have a State Hospital Development Committee meeting tomorrow night just to kind of take stock and catch up. So
Oh, good.
I think that is all the news that's fit to print from my end. With that, I think we're ready to,
Executive session.
yes, well, yeah, I guess before we close this session, we have to move, I'm trying to remember how this works. We move to go to executive session, so we don't close the meeting yet.
Correct.
So for those of you who are here, we won't be able to talk to you going forward from here. But thank you very much for coming. Medfield TV, thanks once again for another great night of coverage.
Thank you.
Thank you for the outro.
Okay.
All right, travel safe out there.
Oh, thank you.
Good night.